Hello friends, we are Soul Fiction. Welcome to our channel. In today's video, we'll explore an exciting video on what if Naruto was a wildfire king. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's dive into the story. The Fourth Shinobi World War had finally reached its peak. Obito had been died after he had been forced by Black Zetsu to bring back Madara Uchiha using the Rinne Tensei, but thanks to Obito's change of heart, after Naruto made him realize how wrong he had been, had at least destroyed Madara's other Rinnegan that had been inside his left eye and destroyed Black Zetsu. While the other eight-tailed beasts thrashed Madara around, Naruto had taken the opportunity to blow up the now empty Gedo statue with a Rasen Shuriken tailed beast bomb combo. Without the Gedo statue, Madara had no hope of becoming the Ten Tails Jinchuriki, and thus, he had failed. Madara, with only one eye and a fading control over Hashirama's Sage Mode, was currently being thrashed by a barrage of attacks from by a Nine Tails Sage Mode Naruto. Come on, Madara. What's wrong? Aren't you supposed to be the Tree Grandpa's equal? Naruto taunted Madara as he punched his face. You think that you can just steal nature chakra? Fool. It takes training to use nature chakra. Even Tree Grandpa needed to train in order to use it. Naruto shouted as he kneed Madara in the stomach. You tried to take away everyone's free will. Why? Because you were dealt a bad hand in life, so you think that you should put the whole world in an illusion? Naruto shouted as he buried his fist in Madara's gut, causing the man to keel over, blood and saliva flying from his mouth. Fool. Living is not for the weak. And real peace for the world can only be attained when everyone wants it. Even if you had succeeded in casting the Infinte Tsukiyomi, it's still a jutsu. Eventually, the illusion would have ended and we would be right back to square one. Naruto knocked Madara over and stepped on his chest. You will never win against me, Madara. Do you know why that is? It's because your cause is worthless. Your cause is not worth fighting for, and that is why you will always lose to me or Tree Grandpa. Naruto stated as he reached down, placing his hand on Madara's chest and with a blast of Nine Tails chakra, killed all of Hashirama's cells inside of Madara's body, which caused the face of Hashirama that was on Madara's chest to fall out, leaving a bloody pit in Madara's chest. Once Naruto did that, Madara lost the medium through which he could safely manipulate nature chakra. The chakra began to turn him into a tree before he forcibly expelled it from his body. But Naruto severed the arm of Madara's that was turned into a tree, leaving him without any arms since the other was destroyed by the tailed beast assault, and knocked Madara back to the ground. How could I, Madara, the greatest Uchiha to ever walk the earth, fail? The revived Uchiha thought. He was angry at so many people right now, he didn't even know what to do. That idiot Obito had started to awaken the 10 tails before he had collected all of the tailed beasts. Which was why he was in this mess anyways. Hashirama hadn't been any help seeing as he had been trying to stop him with his legendary wood-style bloodline limit. The last Uzumaki was royally pissing him off because Madara could not gain the upper hand. The Kyuubi had always been his personal plaything, though now it looked like karma had finally come back to bite him in the ass. The blonde Uzumaki had not only destroyed the Gedo statue, which meant no becoming a Jinchuriki of the 10 tails for Madara, but Naruto had been thoroughly thrashing Madara around like a ragdoll. And now that he had destroyed Hashirama's cells, Madara lost access to wood style and his ability to use Sage Mode. Oh no, Madara thought as his only remaining Rinnegan vanished, leaving only his eternal Mangekyo. No, what have you done to my Rinnegan? Idiot, the only reason you could use the Rinnegan was because you stole DNA from Tree Grandpa. Without that, your Sharingan is back to its true state. Speaking of which, Naruto said as he used Flying Thunder God to teleport to Madara, and without warning, ripped out the Madara's remaining eye and crushed it. Madara screamed in pain as he lost his last eye, before Naruto compounded on that pain by breaking Madara's spine, paralyzing him from the waist down. It's time, Naruto said to himself as he opened up the seal on his stomach and released Kurama from him. Naruto had combined both halves of Kurama earlier by taking it out of his father and recombined both. Naruto collapsed as his life was slowly fading from him. You shouldn't be dragged into hell with me. This is goodbye, old friend. Naruto. Behind you. Kurama shouted at Naruto. He turned to be stabbed in the stomach by Sasuke. Well Dobi, thanks for making this easy for me. Now I can kill all the cage and the tailed beasts and begin my revolution." Sasuke gloated, but that all stopped when he was pierced through the stomach by Kurama's claw. "Idiot Uchiha. We knew you would try something like this. So glad that you proved me right. Your clan is a disease." Kurama noted as a quick burst of high-quality tailed beast chakra destroyed Sasuke's entire chakra network, causing him to cry out in pain. "Naruto, you need to hurry while you still have time." "I know," Naruto panted as he picked himself up and flashed through hand signs. "Reaper Death Seal," Naruto said as the god of death appeared behind. "Why have you summoned me, child of prophecy?" the Shinigami asked. "Lord Shinigami, I need you seal away Madara Uchiha and Sasuke Uchiha. These monsters attempted to destroy the world, and they must not be allowed to come back," Naruto pleaded. "Very well then," the Shinigami said as he reached through Naruto and ripped both souls of the Uchiha's souls out of their bodies. "At least, the world is safe now," Naruto huffed as his life neared its end as his back hit the dirt. "Do not be afraid, child of prophecy, for you have saved the world. You have the gift I shall now grant you, hero. Rejoice, for you have earned it. Divine Jutsu. Reincarnation of the deserving," the Shinigami said as Naruto Uzumaki's eyes closed for the final time, while his soul was sent to a new world, to live a better life than the one he had lived here in the elemental nations. Westeros 280 AC thunder echoed and lightning flashed throughout the Red Keep, as torrents of rain were unleashed from the heavens. It was almost as bad as the storm that Daenerys Targaryen was born in, and yet the cries of a woman could still be heard, above all the noise of the tempest. The screams of Cersei Lannister filled the birthing chamber. She had labored for almost 6 hours brining this new child into the world. The intense pain that came with giving birth was not something she missed, but after 6 hours the child was finally emerging from her womb. The queen's midwives huddled around her as they cared for her, cleaning up the blood and wiping the sweat from her forehead. "Push, Wire Grace. Push." Cersei would normally have yelled or reprimanded her servants had she not been giving birth, so she followed the commands of the midwives, screaming in agony as she finally pushed the babe from her body. As she did so, there was a huge crash of thunder as a bolt of lightning lit up the room, the noise deafening all sound inside the room. The cries of a baby replaced the screams of a mother's agony, as a midwife cradled the newborn in her arms, checking for any signs of problems with the birth and wrapping him in swaddling clothes. Satisfied that there was nothing wrong with the child, the midwife carefully placed the newborn in its mother's arms, smiling as she did so. "Congratulations, Wire Grace. It's a healthy boy." The others standing there, shooing them out of the room, leaving the queen with her son and her brother, Jaime. A smile spread across Cersei's face, despite the exhaustion and pain she was still experiencing, as she reached for the swaddling cloth covering the babe's face. "Another child from my beloved Jaime," Cersei thought. Another pure Lannister. Pulling the cloth back, however, she felt as if her heart stopped. "Jaime, I'm sorry." The words could barely escape her mouth, she was so choked with anger and shock at her child's origins. "There is nothing to be sorry for. He is a beautiful child. But he is not mine." Jaime smiled sadly at Cersei, before turning and walking out of the door, leaving Cersei alone with her child. 290 AC Kings landing in the training yard of the Red Keep. The sound of blunted training swords could be heard, as blunted steel struck blunted steel. Prince Naruto Baratheon was in his heavy training armor, continuing his 2-hour training session with Esir Barristan. Esir Barristan had taken him on as a squire a year back. While Naruto was a prince, he insisted he at least go through the same duties that all squires go through. That did not mean that Naruto wasn't keeping up with his many studies. Naruto was quite intelligent for 11 years old. Anyway, Naruto attempted to strike Esir Barristan, but the elderly knight parried and redirected his prince's blow with expert grace. Naruto was scarcely able to block the next strike that came at his ribcage. Naruto blocked another strike to the left side of his head, but failed to see the lunge at his stomach until he was on his back, groaning. "You've gotten better, Prince Naruto," Esir Barristan Selmy said as he extended his hand out to Naruto, which he graciously accepted. "This time it took me 6 moves to defeat you. That's double the number of last time." "True, Esir Barry, but I still can't beat you," Naruto complained a bit. "I have trained in the way of the sword my entire life, my prince. It will be some time before you can best me." Naruto had insisted that when Esir Barristan sparred with him, he go all out and not hold back. Naruto wanted to get a sense of how good he was. In the beginning, every spar, Esir Barristan would defeat him in one move. As they sparred every day, he slowly got the hang of fighting grown men. Perhaps in a few years, once he had grown, he would last much longer than 6 moves. Still, to last more than one move against the best knight of the century was nothing to scoff at. We will continue again tomorrow, my prince. I believe your lessons with the Grandmaster, correct? Esir Barristan said as the elderly knight and young Prince re-racked their training swords. Yes, I do. Thank you for the lesson, Esir Barry, Naruto said energetically as he sped off towards the Red Keep. Esir Barristan chuckled to himself. The black-haired prince was certainly enthusiastic and a dedicated student. If he continued at the rate he was going, he had no doubt that the prince would be one of the best swordsmen in Westeros. The Red Keep Library. Naruto wasn't just a dedicated swordsman. He also was an avid student of history, and desired to learn politics as he grew older. He reached the library and found Grand Maester Pycelle already inside, sitting down. Grand Maester, Naruto said as he caught his breath, which got the older man's attention. I am sorry for being late. My huff lesson with Esir Barry took a bit longer than we expected. It is no problem, my prince. I only just arrived. Please have a seat. Pycelle stuttered. Naruto liked the Grand Maester well enough, as he was kinda nice to him. FYI. I will only be doing a stutter from Pycelle for one word every time he speaks, as that is annoying to write all that damn stuttering. Today for our history lesson, Prince Naruto, we will be continuing our discussion of the sea conquest of Dorne. Pycelle said. As we learned in our previous lesson, King Daeron I ascended the Iron Throne after the death of his father, King Aegon III, also known as Dragonbane. King Daeron wanted to complete the campaign begun by his ancestor, Aegon the Conqueror. Daeron the young dragon was only 14 years old when he began his war in 157 AC. While the King conquered Dorne within the year, he soon lost it in 4 years, and would later be killed on the Prince's Pass when the Dornishmen met with him under a banner of peace. But why? Why would the Dornishmen rebel? I thought in our last read, Daeron had taken a number of hostages? Naruto asked, generally confused. The Dornish are a dishonorable, arrogant lot, my prince, with different customs from the rest of Westeros. A disgraceful people that break the guest right and commit murder under banners of peace. The 7 kingdoms would do well to be rid of them, Pycelle said, making his personal opinion known. Regardless, the hostages taken by Daeron I Targaryen ensured the loyalty of the Dornish nobility, but the small folk continued to rebel against Targaryen rule. Lord Lionel Tyrell moved with his train from one keep to the next each month, chasing the rebels and punishing those who had given them aid. The rebels attacked his train, stealing or destroying supplies, killing soldiers or horses, and burning camps. True rebellion began when Lionel reached Sandstone, the seat of House Q Corgyle. It was his custom to turn the lords of the keeps he stayed in out of their chambers, to sleep in their beds. One night at Sandstone he found himself in a bed with a heavy velvet canopy, and was informed that he could summon a wench by pulling on the sash. When he did so, the canopy opened and 100 red scorpions fell upon him. The news of his death led to a rebellion throughout Dorne, and in a fortnight all the work of the young dragon was undone. In 161 AC, the Dornishmen agreed to meet to discuss terms and renew their fealty. It was a ploy to kill King Daeron I, however, and the Dornish attacked the young dragon while under a peace banner. Of Daeron's Kingsguard knights, 3 died, Esir Aemon the Dragon Knight was captured, and another yielded. Esir Oliver Oakheart of the Kingsguard died at the side of King Daeron I, though it is unknown whether he was one of the 3 Kingsguard knights who died with Daeron, or whether he died earlier during the war, in defense of his king. Alistair Oakheart blew his warhorn while dying in the Prince's Pass, but it is unconfirmed if this was the same incident as Daeron's death. And with King Daeron's death, the conquest of Dorne officially ended. The Grand Maester got up and said, I have a small council meeting soon, Prince Naruto. Read over the sea conquest of Dorne and we will finish our discussion of it on the morrow. And with that, Pycelle slowly waddled out of the library. It was late in the day and Naruto read through the conquest several times. He was studious like that. By the time Naruto had finished reading through The Conquest of Dorne by King Darren a third time, it was already dark out and he was tired. He opened the door and almost walked out when he noises and hid behind one of the pillars. "Come on." A hushed voice came. "We need to get out of here." "Shut it." A second voice came. "You know why we are here. King Balin wanted this stuff for our mighty Iron Fleet." "Yes, I know that, but we already got it. Why are we inside the Red Keep, kidnapping the princess? If we get caught, we're fucked." "What?" Naruto thought to himself. "They want to do what to my little sister?" Now Naruto was not very innocent for a 10-year-old boy. He had walked in one day on his father by accident one day when he was 8. Both his father and the whore in his dad's bed were naked. Robert had a pitcher of wine in his hand, as he plowed the whore from behind. Cersei had been the one to find him like that. Cersei sent the whore away and slapped his father across the face for doing Dethold be known that the Baratheon rage, even a child's, is a terrible thing to behold. Most who encounter the pure, unadulterated rage of a true Baratheon don't live to tell the tale. Mostly because they tend to die in brutal and horrific ways. Argilac the arrogant Durandon had been stupid enough to taunt Orys Baratheon during their battle, about how he was going to enjoy raping Orys's half-sister Rhaenys while making him watch. Argilac didn't last another minute until an enraged Orys bifurcated Argilac at the waist and then proceeded to chop off his head. Rhaegar Targaryen was said to have been the finest swordsman in the Seven Kingdoms. That didn't save him when he faced Robert in single combat. For Robert didn't use a sword, he used a warhammer. Wielding his warhammer in one hand, Oakenshield in the other, his father caved in Rhaegar's breastplate, before smashing his brain into 100 pieces. The most well-known incident of someone surviving and besting an enraged Baratheon was Esser Duncan the Tall. Prince Duncan the Small Targaryen, son of Aegon V, was betrothed to Lionel the Laughing Storm Baratheon's daughter. But Prince Duncan broke his betrothal, which caused Naruto's ancestor to secede from the Seven Kingdoms and declare himself the Storm King. The rebellion would end after a trial by combat between Lionel and Esser Duncan the Tall. Esser Duncan had been lucky. While he was one of the best knights in the realm, befitting his place as Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, and one of the strongest, Lionel was a Baratheon, wielding their ancestral warhammer in one hand. Esser Duncan scarcely avoided blows that would have killed him nearly 10 different times. The only reason he survived was because by this time, Lionel Baratheon was old, and had lost much of his former strength. Naruto grasped the Valyrian steel dagger his father had gifted him for his 10th name day. It was a simple dirk with a black leather grip and a golden stag's head pommel. He peeked around the pillar but not enough that the Ironborn could see. Then again, the Ironborn were facing away from him, so it's not like they see him. The first guy in front was holding a jug of something, the second was holding Mykrella with a bag over her tiny little head, and the third guy was probably Dennis Drum. Naruto, even in his rage, knew he had to get this right the first time, because he was still 10, and these Ironborn were at least twice his age. He took off his boots so they wouldn't hear him approach from behind. Then, with all the speed his little yet powerful body could muster, dirk gripped tightly, he jumped onto Dennis Drum's back and in one fluid motion, stabbed his dirk into the back of the Drum's neck, severing his spine, with the point of the blade coming out the front of the Ironborn's throat. Naruto quickly got to Mykrella, pulled gag off and cut her bindings loose. "Mykrella, go get help, run." Naruto sheathed his dirk and grasped the sword of the Drum he had killed as his little sister ran. They had been within a foot of each other, so he just reached and picked it up. By this point the other Ironborn had put down the jug he was carrying and pulled out an axe. Naruto parried the attack and sliced his opponent's arm off, causing him to scream in pain. The Ironborn's overhead slash was blocked by Naruto, though he had to use both hands. After a second of struggling, he forced the Ironborn back, then with a one-handed sweep, sliced across both of his shins, slicing through skin, muscle and severing bone. The Ironborn screamed as he fell onto his back. Right on top of the jug covering him in volatile green liquid. Naruto, in his rage, didn't stop to think as he pulled a torch off the wall and tossed it at the Ironborn. But when he saw the green light, he knew he made a mistake and turned to run and escape the blast. Unfortunately for Naruto, he only made it a few steps before the edge of the flames burned his back, causing him to fall in pain. King Landing 291 AC. It was several weeks after the end of the Greyjoy Rebellion that Naruto could be found in the training yard in the Red Keep. His burns may be fully healed, but the pain it caused him was great. Everything caused him pain, but it was slowly getting better. At the end of the rebellion, Balin along with Theon and Yara had been dragged before the court. Balin, as punishment for his rebellion, had right arm and left leg smashed to pieces with Robert's hammer, resulting in both limbs permanently crippled, to serve as an everlasting reminder to Balin and the Ironborn that they were not to rebel again. Worse, he was publicly neutered, turning him into a eunuch, so that he couldn't father replacement children. But the worst of it all was that Theon and Yara were forced to watch to instill fear of the gods in the next Lord of the Iron Islands. "Why don't you give up?" Jaime said, seeing his nephew give a weak swing with his right hand, the dummy barely moving. "With your injuries, it's going to be impossible for you to wield a sword." "Oh yes, because this is what I wanted to fucking hear when I got up this morning," Naruto said sarcastically, his tone full of venom. "Jaime Lannister, the greatest oathbreaker and most arrogant sack of shit to ever live, telling me I'll never wield a sword. What the hell do you know? You never had to try to achieve anything in your goddamn life," he yelled as he swung at the dummy again. Naruto had been exposed to bad language at an early age, due to his father, and the intense pain his burns were causing him made him speak out of anger. He cursed his mother for never loving him before being burned. He cursed Joffrey for stealing his mother's affections from him. He cursed Jaime for being an arrogant fucking cunt that thought the sun shined out of his ass. He cursed Tywin, and all the Lannisters. His outburst made his uncle stop the insult he was about to fire off. "Say that again," Jaime asked with an edge. "You're the son of Tywin Lannister. You had the talent to be a great swordsman, you had the best instructors money can buy, and you had the love of both your parents. What the hell do you know about struggle? You never had to fight to earn your mother's affection, and you never had to give it any effort to be a great swordsman. You have never been burned with wildfire and are not in constant pain because of them, so what the fucking hell gives a worthless piece of human trash like you the right to tell me what I can and can't be?" Naruto swinging the practice sword only to have nothing happen. "Damn it," groaned the boy. "Why you Esser Jaime?" Esser Barristan called out as he walked up. "The king wants to have a word with you, now." Jaime, deciding not to push his luck today, left. Esser Barristan looked at Naruto's hand and his form was messed up. "You're holding the blade wrong, my Prince Barristan," the bold said, stepping forward and showing the boy the right way to wield a blade. "Now, do it the way I showed you." "Rah!" the boy yelled, swing the blade with all his might, and to his utter shock the dummy toppled over and smacked against the ground. "At this rate, my prince, I think you'll become better than your uncle if you keep this rate up," Barristan said, smiling. "I intend to," Naruto said through gritted teeth as he continued training. Joffrey was hiding behind the pillar. He glared at his younger brother. He hated his younger brother. His father never wanted to do anything with him, yet his black-haired siblings got to spend time with Robert whenever they wanted. Joffrey loathed his siblings for taking his father's affections from him. He would teach his little brother a lesson. He knew from watching that Naruto's back was hypersensitive to pain. Joffrey would show his little brother what happens when he takes something from him. Naruto walked back to the rack to pick up some more training swords. Naruto was sweaty though, and lifted up his shirt to wipe off the sweat. His entire back from HIY down to his waist was a very bright cherry red. Joffrey saw his chance and rushed at his brother with a sadistic glint in his eye, picking up a blunted training sword. Naruto finished wiping his face off when he heard something running towards him. Naruto turned his head just in time to see Joffrey swing his sword, but he was too slow to move and the blunted sword struck him in his back. Joffrey was too weak to actually break or fracture anything, but when the sword struck Naruto's hypersensitive back, Naruto's mind erupted in an explosion of pain. GGGGRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRR red-hot steel blade stab every single one of his nerves. Naruto hunched over after he finished roaring. Joffrey winded up for another strike and Esser Barristan, who had just come back from grabbing a sip of water, began rushing to stop it. Naruto got to him first though. "I'll kill you, bastard," Naruto roared as he caught Joffrey's arm, Naruto eyes bloodshot, as he snapped Joffrey's elbow against his shoulder, before throwing his to the ground, and pummeling him in the face. When Joffrey tried to stop him with his good hand, Naruto broke his wrist and elbow, and pummeled him further, blood flying with every blow. RRRAHHHHHH, Naruto roared as he pummeled the shit out of Joffrey, his hair, face and fists drenched in his secret half-brother's blood. "My prince, stop this," Esser Barristan said as he pulled Naruto off of Joffrey. Naruto was screaming bloody murder as tried to escape Esser Barristan's hold. Joffrey, by this point, was unconscious, with 2 broken arms, his face pummeled to a pulp and covered in his own blood. Cersei, who had been looking for Joffrey, saw him in this state and rushed to kneel beside her eldest son, and yelled at 2 Lannister guards, who, having heard commotion, arrived. "Get your prince to the maester, now," she screamed at them. The 2 guards hurriedly picked up Joffrey and carried him to the maester. Cersei stood up, eyes shining with barely contained fury. She slapped Naruto hard across the face, make his head swerve to one side. "How dare you hurt your brother like that?" she yelled at him, ignoring the fact that Joffrey had attacked her son. Esser Barristan hesitantly let him go and consoled Naruto as the young prince finally calmed down and realized what he had done. "Throne room later, I want him punished. Robert!" Cersei screamed at Robert on the Iron Throne as Jon Arryn stood by. With Esser Barristan standing close to Naruto and Naruto had his head down. "He nearly killed my boy, my first boy." 7 hells. Joffrey attacked him. Naruto was only defending himself. Robert fired back. "I don't want him near Joffrey anymore. He's already tried to kill Joff once, and he will do it again. I want him exiled," she screamed at Robert, forgetting for a moment that Naruto was Robert's favorite son. Robert got really angry and actually punched her in the face, sending her tumbling to the ground, her face swelling and nose bleeding. "Get out of my sight, you fucking whore, before you piss me off anymore and I do something you won't live to regret." Cersei left to see the maester before Robert sighed. Jon looked concerned. "Robert," Jon said, "that was too far, my boy." "I know, Jon. I shouldn't have done it. That was not kingly. But she made me so angry when she said that. I just saw red," Robert said lamely. "With all due respect, Robert, maybe it would be a good idea to get him away from the capital for a little bit," Jon Arryn suggested, causing Robert to turn sharply. "What the hell are you talking about?" Robert asked. "Just until things calm down. Young Naruto has mentioned that his back is slowly getting less sensitive. Maybe a year-long fostering in the Vale will help him," Jon suggested, and Robert, due to his own experience fostering in the Vale, definitely saw some benefits to this. "Who did you have in mind?" Robert asked. "Lord Yohn Royce mentioned that would be interested in fostering him for a year," Jon said. Robert thought about it and it seemed like things could not go wrong. "Send a message to Royce. Tell him that he can foster my son for a year," Robert said as he got off his throne and went to console his favorite son. "Are you sending me away?" Naruto said weakly, sniffling as he did. "It's not sending you away. It's a fostering. Many lords do it to help their children develop bonds with other houses and promote friendship. And it also has the benefit of keeping you away from your mother while she is in a mood," Robert admitted. "It's only for a year, and with any luck, your back will be fully healed." I didn't mean to do it, Dad. Naruto tried to say cause he did feel ashamed of almost killing his brother, even if Joffrey was a prick and deserved it. "I know," Robert said as he knelt down so he could gently hug his favorite son, who returned the gesture. "You mother is unreasonable where your cunt brother is concerned." "He is a cunt, isn't he?" Naruto said, joking with his father. "Huh. Yes he is." Robert and Naruto laughed, forgetting their troubles for a moment and just being father and son. 2 weeks later, a cold wave of water splashed over him, waking Naruto from his unconsciousness. His body shivered from the freezing cold as another splash of salty sea water hit his back and he realized he was in the bowels of a ship. The rocking ship smelled terrible with the mixture of piss and shit mingled with the stench of vomit and the salty air of the ocean they were sailing on. The last thing he remembered was getting on a ship for Gulltown in the Vale, but halfway there, the ship was attacked by a horde of pirates, led by Euron. They captured him and knocked him out, and now he was here. He looked up to find that his hands were still in manacles hooked to the low ceiling. Frantically, he began to pull his hands down, trying to break the binding but to no avail. After a while, he gave up and looked around his surroundings and found a dozen or so men and women in the same predicament as him. Good tay see er alive. Thought ye were dead fair a while there. Naruto heard a gruff voice and turned his gaze ahead of him to find a man staring back at him. How long have I been out? He asked the man. A splash of freezing water washed over him again, making gasp at the coldness that felt like daggers stabbing at his back. He had to grit his teeth to prevent the scream that wanted to escape him since his back was still not fully healed. A few days, 3 at most, the man answered him. He looked at Naruto up and down, examining closely. Fancy lookin' clothes are wearing. Must be a lord's bastard boy. Your lord father got tired of talkin' care of ye. No, Naruto responded briskly, I am a prince, son of King Robert Baratheon. The man stared at him silently for a moment before cackling a raspy laugh. 299 AC Li. Outside of Li, the Golden Company was camped. The Golden Company is a company of sellswords founded by the great bastard, Ager Rivers, known as Bittersteel. They are considered the largest, most famous, and most expensive sellsword or mercenary company in the free cities. Despite the notorious unreliability of sellswords, the Golden Company is reputed to have never broken a contract. Their motto is "Our word is good as gold," while their war cry, "Beneath the gold, the bitter steel," pays homage to their founder. In the Captain General's tent, laid a 19-year-old young man. Naruto Baratheon, the Wildfire Knight, at 19 years of age, stood 6 feet 3, with a muscular and ripped physique as he threw on some black pants and boots, sitting on the edge of his bed, before looking at some of the letters of his desk, most of them containing offers for contracts. Naruto read through them absent-mindedly while his thoughts drifted. At 13, the Golden Company sacked Yunkai for trying to renege on paying them for destroying severds that were threatening the city, which allowed Naruto to escape his imprisonment, and he joined up with the Golden Company. He quickly rose through their ranks and within 2 years, became the Captain General, which was the title for the overall commander of the Golden Company, replacing Miles Blackheart Toyne when he died in battle in 295 AC, who had been something of a mentor to him. Under Naruto, the Golden Company expanded from their original 10,000 men to 70,000 men, cementing their place as the largest and most powerful private army for hire in the world. He had fought over 100 battles with the company and had grown to like being a part of it so much that he actually did not want to leave. When given a choice between returning home or staying with the company, he opted to stay with them. Part of him did regret his decision, though. Missing his beloved father and not being there for his funeral and his fellow black-haired siblings Tommen and Mykrella. He missed Renly but was never really close to Stannis and didn't really care about him. He certainly did not care about anyone in the Lannister side of his family. Especially not his elder brother, whose stupidity, cruelty, and lack of honor and discipline caused the War of the Five Kings. As he read through the proposals, he found one with the stamp of the hand of the king. He read through it. Apparently, Varys had finally managed to find him. Not surprising that it took him so long, there were no little children in his army, unless they were joining up. Tyrion, his uncle, was acting hand of the king, subbing for Tywin, who last Naruto heard, was getting his ass kicked by Robb Stark. Naruto read the message further and Tyrion wrote that he wanted to hire the Golden Company to fight for the Iron Throne. Tyrion stated that the Iron Throne would pay them 60,000 gold dragons a month, and any castles the company took, they would be allowed to keep all the spoils. Naruto had acquired a massive amount of wealth from his conquests. Under his leadership, the company destroyed Tyrosh root and stem when they tried to renege on their payment, and they did the same thing to Mir for Lee, destroying both cities, and claiming millions of pieces of gold as well as other treasures as spoils, while Lee claimed dominion over the disputed lands. They had crushed 8 Dothraki hordes. 3 of them didn't even number 1,000 Dothraki, but 2 of the ones he did destroy included the 15,000 Dothraki in Khal Motho, a 60-year-old Khal with his riders being just as old as him, and the 20,000 Khalasar of Khal Zekko, during his usual threatening of Qohor. He took all their riches as well, and the city of Qohor paid him with a massive chest of gold and reforging some Valyrian steel he had taken from Tyrosh and Mir into a suit of armor and a katana blade for him. He also mopped up the 3 Khalasars under Khal's Pono, Jocko, and Jamo. He had destroyed several sellsword companies, his most famous being the Windblown Company, where he had gotten the Valryan steel for his katana from a Dothraki he had killed that had a Valyrian steel arak. The most loot he had earned, though, was when he destroyed New Gis 2 years ago, and turned it and the islands that surround it into an uninhabitable wasteland. All in all, the Golden Company had amassed a fortune equivalent to 400 million gold dragons, and Naruto personally owned 25 million. Naruto did still care about his family, and right before his dad had the fatal accident, had paid off all the crown's debts and put 2 million gold dragons in the coffers, basically an 8 million gold dragon loan from himself. He could not let the Iron Throne fall because Robb Stark and his only disliked Baratheon uncle would probably not pay him back. Looks like he was finally going back to home, King's Landing. Tower of the Hand, do you have to do that here? Tyrion asked Bronn, who was cleaning his hands. Tommen mostly ignored it. I like to keep me hands clean, he pointed out. Yes, but do you have to do it here? Tyrion pointed out, and Bronn tossed the nail clippers down. You should start wearing the gold cloak. I don't want to wear a gold cloak, Bronn said. You're commander of the City Watch. You shouldn't be dressed like a common sellsword, Tyrion pointed out. A cloak slows you down in a fight, makes it hard to move quietly, and the gold catches the light, so you're nice and easy to spot at night, Bronn explained. While I agree with you, you're not exactly sneaking through alleyways any longer. You're a leader now, you are supposed to stand out, Tommen pointed out. We had a deal, and wearing a gold cloak wasn't part of it, Bronn mentioned. Fine, fine. No gold cloak, Tyrion complained. A few seconds later, Bronn started tapping the table with his fingers. What? Tyrion asked when it got annoying. What? Bronn asked. What? What? Why are you staring at me? Tyrion asked in annoyance, and Bronn scoffs. You don't want me cleaning me nails. You don't want me looking your way. Why am I here? He demanded. To help me and my nephew plan the defense of King's Landing, Tyrion says, exasperated, and Bronn laughs. Stannis will be here any day. And one of these explains how to beat him, Bronn sighs. Tyrion looks at the cover and reads, An History of the Great Sieges of Westeros by Archmaester Chevalathan, Chevalatesh. Chevaltish. I'd swap all your books for a few good archers, Bronn said. Maybe so, but having a plan is better than no plan at all, Tommen countered as Varys walked in. My Lord Hand, my prince, commander. I must compliment you on the Gold Cloak's performance these last few weeks. Did you know there has been a marked drop in thievery? Varys said. I did not know. Tyrion mentioned as he and Tommen turned to Bronn. And how did you accomplish this marked drop in thievery? Me and the lads rounded up all the known thieves, Bronn said. For questioning? Tommen asked in uncertainty, as he figured Bronn wasn't that kind of guy. No, Bronn said, implying that he killed them before sitting down. It's just the unknown thieves we need to worry about now. Maybe this part's not in your books. See, it's not the fighting that kills most people. It's the starving. Food's worth more than gold. Noble ladies sell their diamonds for a sack of potatoes. Things get bad enough. The poor start eating each other. The thieves, they love a siege. Soon as the gates are sealed, they steal all the food. By the time it's all over, they're the richest men in town. Given the circumstances, my lord, I believe extreme measures are warranted, Varys said to Tyrion before he saw what book Tyrion was reading. The Great Sieges of Westeros. Thrilling subject. Shame Archmaester Chevalathan wasn't a better writer. Stannis knows King's Landing, Tyrion said as he grabbed a map of King's Landing. He knows where the walls are strongest, and he knows which gates are weakest. Tommen spies one entrance to the city that catches his eye. The Mudgate. It's in poor condition, and half-decent ram will break it down in 10 minutes, and it's only 10 yards from the water. It's the easiest to breach. Stannis is bringing all 40,000 of his men, and he can't afford to commit them to the more reinforced gates. The Mudgate, the most likely spot he'll land. And if Stannis does attack the Mudgate, what is our plan? Varys asked. We could throw books at his men, Bronn suggested cheekily. We don't have that many books, Varys pointed out seriously. We don't have that many men, either, Tommen countered seriously. What do we have? Varys asked, and Tyrion's eyes sparked with enlightenment as a plan formed in his head. Jars of pig shit, he said, Bronn and Tommen smirking as they caught on to his plan. It was at that point that Lancel Lannister ran in. My lord, he said frantically as he huffed and puffed. Ah, cousin, Tyrion said in mock delight. Wonder if did my sister send you? No, no, my lord. There is a massive army sitting outside the king's gate, Lancel said quickly. What? Stannis. He can't be here already, we still have 4 days at least, Tyrion said in disbelief as he jumped out of his seat. It's the Golden Company, Lancel yelled hysterically. They're outside the king's gate and they want to speak to you at once. Something about a contract you offered them. Ah, good. They got my message, Tyrion said with genuine relief. You hired the Golden Company, uncle? Tommen asked. When I first arrived back in King's Landing, I sent out several missives to prominent sellsword companies to get them to fight for us. The Golden Company was one of them, though I'm surprised they accepted. With any luck, we'll have another 10,000 men for the siege. Come on along, Pod, Bronn, Tommen. You can come too, Lord Varys. My lord, Lancel called out before Tyrion left. I couldn't get an accurate count of their men, but it was definitely more than 10,000 men. The King's Gate, you know, I think the Golden Snitch was underselling it, Bronn commented. You wouldn't be wrong, Tyrion said as they surveyed the site in front of them to see way more than 10,000 men. How many men do you count? 50,000? 65,000? It's kinda hard to tell, Tommen said as 5 men walked toward the gate from the company but stopped 10 yards outside archery range. Well, we may as well speak with their leader, Tyrion said as he, Tommen, Bronn, Varys, and Pod walked down and out of the gate, stopping 1 yard from them. Tyrion was able to get a look at the 5 men. The one on the far left was a white-haired summer islander with skin as dark as soot. He wore his worldly wealth upon his person, including a feathered cloak of green and orange, which was magnificent to behold. He wore Lord's ransom in golden arm rings, with a quiver of golden heart arrows and a golden heart bow holstered on his back. Next to him was a Lyseni man with pale lilac eyes and long white gold hair. His lips were very full, giving him an almost feminine appearance at first glance. His fingernails were painted purple, and his earlobes dripped with pearls and amethysts. He wore a red hooded cloak that covered his entire body and was made of Myrish silk. On the far right was a cadaverous-looking fellow, with a pointed black beard and blood-red hair that tumbles about his shoulders in oiled ringlets. He wears a lord's ransom in golden arm rings and a leopard skin draped across one shoulder. Next to him was lean 30-year-old man with dirty blonde hair that was combed back, clean-shaven face, and blue eyes. He had a saber tied to his left hip that had a golden skull for a pommel, and he wore a standard set of Golden Company-issued armor. The middle figure was the most interesting. The suit of armor that he wore was dyed pitch black, yet the pauldrons, breastplate, gauntlets, and helmet bore gold accents. In the center of the breastplate was a black stag, wreathed within wildfire green flame. The helm was decorated with large stag antlers. The stag antlers themselves were embossed with gold and pointed upward yet curved inward, giving it a demonic look. The helm itself had a V-shaped visor, and for some reason, nothing but his hard blue yes could be seen. 1. Tyrion noted that his armor almost identical to that of Robert Baratheon during the rebellion. The sword at his hip, though, was the equally interesting. It was a katana with an ornate bronze guard. Guard is an oval shape, and the handle seems to be braided from black handle. The blade features several intricate ornaments. Most notable is a relief of a dragon at the endpoint of the hilt. The scabbard is black, made of traditional lacquered wood. It also features a yellow saggio, the cord used to tie the katana to the waist. 2. It was the man in stag armor that spoke. You are Tyrion Lannister, acting hand of the king? I am, Tyrion affirmed. I am Garren Greenflame, Captain General of the Golden Company. We are here to accept the contract outlined in this missive you sent to us, Naruto said, using his alias, which was the reason Varys had not found him for so long. He dared not use his real name, even over in Essos. The man on my far left is Black Balak, and the man between him and me is Lyson Omar. To my far right is Gorys Edoran, and the man between Gorys and me is Harry Strickland. These are my officers. Well met, Captain General. Tommen and Tyrion both said. We can talk more in my command tent, Naruto said as he motioned for them to follow. He led them to a golden tent in the middle of the camp, surrounded by a perimeter of spikes with gilded skulls tied to them. They entered the tent and sat down. Refreshments? Naruto offered his guests. Tyrion graciously accepted, and Tommen and Bronn also accepted a glass. So, let's talk business, Naruto said as he leaned back in his chair. Let's start with how many men is the company bringing to the table. Last I heard, the company only had 10,000 men, Tommen stated. I was wondering the same thing, Tyrion said. At one point, the company did only have 10,000 men at one time. Now, ever since the Captain General took over, our numbers have swelled to 70,000 men, as well as our riches, Harry said to the side. Now, about the monthly stipend you promised, Gories mentioned. Yes, the crown can afford to pay the monthly amount mentioned in the missive, so we are all good on that end. I will have the stipend ready to be distributed every month, Tyrion said. Good, Lysono said before continuing, and the part about how we get to take all the loot from the castles we can. Well, since the contract outlines that and I plan to have you take out the other two rival kings, which includes the Greyjoys and nobody cares about them, then yes. Excellent, Naruto said. They signed 2 copies of the contract, one for Tyrion and one for Naruto. Could Lord Tyrion, Prince Tommen and I have the room, gentlemen? There is something I need to discuss with them privately, Naruto said. His officers left the tent and Tyrion mentioned for Pod and Bronn to stand outside the tent. So, what did you wish to discuss? Tyrion asked. Naruto said nothing for a moment before taking off his helmet, letting his spiky black hair free. He placed the helmet down on his desk. It's been a long time, little brother, uncle, Naruto said. NN Naruto? Tommen asked as his beloved older brother stood before the younger Baratheon prince, alive and well. Yeah Tommen, it's me. Who else would get burned by Wildfire and save Sella from being a salt wife? Naruto joked and Tommen walked around the table. He groaned as Tommen punched him pretty hard in the face. Ow, that actually hurt. That was for not coming home sooner, Tommen pointed out angrily before his expression softened and he hugged his elder brother, which Naruto returned. I'm glad you okay, Tommen whispered as he hugged his older brother tightly. Me too, little brother, Naruto said as he hugged him back. Outside the sound of steel clashing with steel reverberated through the air. Though who was sparring intensely was Naruto and Tommen. Their blades' strikes were lightning quick, with no wasted movement at all. Some of the men could barely keep track of their blades as the two brothers. They had been sparring for 15 solid minutes, neither one of them able to gain ground. Tommen was more nimble and faster with his strikes, while Naruto was almost as quick, sturdier, and stronger. Now I'm glad I fought Never the young prince, he probably would have kicked my ass in 10 seconds. Bronn mentioned to Tyrion, Pod, and Varys, while remembering how Tommen had killed Esser Vardis Egan in under 20 seconds. Yes, my nephews are very impressive with their swordplay, Tyrion noted as the two brothers locked blades and clashed, with Naruto slowly pushing Tommen back. Tyrion turned to Varys. How come you didn't the Golden Company when you tracked them down for me, Lord Varys? Because I did not know, my lord. My little birds managed to find the prince 6 years ago in Yunkai, but by the time I told the king and the search party he sent to retrieve him got to Yunkai, the Golden Company had already sacked the city. I lost track of him after that since he used an alias to go by, and there were other matters that demanded my immediate attention, Varys answered. It was at that moment that Naruto managed to get the upper hand and ducked under Tommen's horizontal slash, swinging the flat side of his blade, tripping Tommen up, making him fall on his back as Naruto pointed his sword at Tommen. I yield, Tommen said, breathing heavily. The men cheered as Naruto helped him up. That was a great match. It's been a while since I had someone who could actually match me in a sword fight. Who taught you? Naruto asked. It was Esser Barristan. I squired for him from age 9 to 12 and trained very hard every day. In the last tourney, which was for the appointment of Lord Eddard Stark, I actually won the melee and beat Uncle Jaime in front of everyone. Dad was so happy seeing Jaime humiliated in public that he knighted me afterwards as Esser Tommen Baratheon, the Storm Knight, Tommen said proudly. Well, I'm sorry I missed that. I would have loved to see that arrogant uncle of ours get knocked on his ass. Naruto and Tommen laughed as they put the training swords away. Why didn't you come back? Tommen asked, showing a little vulnerability. At first, I couldn't. I didn't have the money after I escaped Yunkai when it was sacked, so I joined the Golden Company to get the money. But by the time I was 15, I no longer wanted to leave. I loved the freedom that came with being in the company, Naruto said as he placed a comforting hand on Tommen's shoulder, But I never stopped loving my siblings or missing Dad. Now that I am here, I wished I had come back sooner." They retired back to his command tent and Tyrion, Varys, Pod, and Bronn joined them. "So, how were things after my unintentional departure?" Naruto said as he poured them some Arbor Red. "Joffrey was bedridden for a whole year while Pycelle and a group of maesters that specialized in healing fixed him up. The Red Keep had never been quiet and dramaless, it was almost peaceful," Tyrion said. "Well, I wouldn't say that, Uncle," Tommen mentioned, causing Tyrion to groan. "That's why I said, almost peaceful, dear nephew," Tyrion smirked as he drank. "Queen Cersei was hysterical at the Crown Prince being bedridden for the beating you gave him, Prince Naruto. It did not end until Joffrey was fully healed," Lord Varys said respectfully. "Damn, I was hoping his face would have scarred from that," Naruto grumbled. "Me too, brother," Tommen said. "After he recovered, he got worse where me and Mycrella were concerned. Without you there to shield us, we got the full brunt of his cruelty. It didn't help that Mother always defended him. He skinned our cats alive and she called it a child's curiosity. It certainly made me and Sella lose any respect or love we still had for Mother. Me and our sister grew to hate our mother, as well as Joffrey and Jaime." At Naruto's puzzled expression, Tommen explained. "You may not remember, but while you were recovering from your burns, Mycrella and I spent nearly all of our free time near you." "I kinda remember. You, Sella, Uncle Renly, and Dad were the first ones I woke up to," Naruto said. "Yeah, well, our bitch of a mother didn't even bother to visit you once. Neither did Joffrey or Jaime. Tyrion did visit you a couple times, so at least one Lannister is not completely hopeless," Tommen smirked. "You wound me, nephew. Deeply," Tyrion joked and Tommen smiled. "Love you too, Uncle," Tommen said, which made Naruto smile a little. "Anyway, me and our sister tried to keep our hatred bottled up and for a time it worked. But on our 12th name day, Joffrey did something that made us both lose our tempers." Flashback: Joffrey placed 2 boxes on the table in front of Tommen and Mycrella. What is this?" Myrcella asked. "Your presents," Joffrey said with that mad insane grin on his face. "Go on, open them." Tommen and Mycrella didn't really want to, since Joffrey's smiling was never a good thing, but they figured they should get it over with. So they opened up their boxes. "You vile, loathsome, evil little cockroach," Tommen and Mycrella shouted at him in anger as Robert looked at what was inside of the box. "You little shit. How dare you do this on their name day?" Robert shouted. Joffrey had skinned both Tommen and Mycrella's pregnant cats, tore out their still developing babies and tossed the skin and babies in a box. He was hoping to make them cry and humiliate them. Something inside Tommen and Myrcella broke that day as Cersei tried to keep Robert from killing Joffrey. They had put up with their elder brother's abuse for a long time without Naruto to protect them. They just put up with it, longing for the day when it was over. Since Myrcella would eventually be married off to some influential lord and Tommen was most likely going to inherit the Stormlands since Renly still had not found himself a girl, they figured it was bound to happen. But this act caused them to finally lose control of their Baratheon rage as it erupted within them. Tommen grabbed a steak knife and stabbed it into Joffrey's left hand, which rested on the table, causing the insane bastard to scream in pain. Myrcella grabbed a glass pitcher of wine that was nearby and smashed it against Joffrey's face, causing to break against his face, embedding some glass in his face and causing wine to fly everywhere. Myrcella pulled the knife out of Joffrey's hand as the bastard fell on his back screaming in pain. Both of them leapt over the table and Myrcella stabbed the knife into Joffrey's right leg, causing more screams. Tommen and Myrcella then proceeded to wail on Joffrey, both of them shouting at how much they despised him, reviled him, and how he was a vile, insane monstrosity that should have been drowned at birth. Robert managed to pull his children away while Joffrey was taken to the Grandmaesters to be treated for nearly being beaten to death again. Once Tommen and Myrcella calmed down, the awkward silence was broken by Tyrion, who in his infinite wisdom, said, "Well, on that note, I say we should get out the strong wine." Flashback end: Naruto applauded Tommen for what he did. "Good, that little shit deserved it. Well, it sure felt good to let loose, but Dad had both me and Myrcella foster elsewhere to protect us and let us grow in an environment where we weren't under constant threat from Joffrey. I was sent to foster 1 year with our Uncle Stannis, then with Lord Yohn Royce in the Vale for another year. Then I fostered with Ned Stark for my last year and got to know his children before Jon Arryn died and Dad came up north to retrieve me and get Ned to be his hand. Myrcella spent 3 years in Highgarden. Tommen said to Naruto's surprise. Dad let the Fat Flower have his only daughter, Naruto said in surprise. No, Tyrion said. See, I suggested the idea to Tommen to suggest to his father to let Myrcella make friends with Marjorie Tyrell and learn from Olenna Tyrell. Ah, the Queen of Thorns. Now I see what you were going for. She is an example all women should learn from, Naruto said. Yeah, so Myrcella learned subtlety, manipulation and privately learned how to wield daggers and poison while maintaining her sweet disposition. I focused on my martial skill, military tactics, diplomacy, and how to rule effectively, Tommen said. Well, I am glad to hear you are doing well, brother, Naruto said as he finished his wine. Now, let's talk about the impending attack. That night Cersei's quarters. Thank you, Podrick, Tyrion said as Pod poured him some wine. Odd little boy. Cersei snidely said. I have odd little boys, Tyrion said. You and Varys both. Cersei commented rudely. Excellent lamprey pie. Were you slaving away in the kitchen all day? Tyrion mocked as he knew she did not cook her own food. I hear Joffrey and Tommen plan on fighting, Cersei said as she turned her back to him. An inspiration for the troops. The young king in his shining armor fighting to defend the capital against the wicked old rebel. And his younger brother who is a million times more skilled than the king could ever hope to be, Tyrion said. They're only boys. They are not ready, Cersei said as her desire to control everything blinded her to the fact that Joffrey was technically a man, and Tommen could easily defeat anyone who came at him, bar the Mountain, and maybe Jaime and Esser Barristan. Joffrey is what, 20? And Tommen has already killed a far more experienced knight, fought with me in our grandfather's army at the Battle of the Green Fork, not to mention, beat Jaime last year in a tourney. Tommen will be fine, Tyrion said as Cersei sent all the servants out. Joffrey's place is not on the battlefield. Cersei snarled, revealing that her true concern was mainly for her golden boy, and not her true-born son. It's not on the throne, either, or being a Baratheon, since he isn't one, or even being alive for that matter. Sadly for all of us. Tyrion mocked her, as he had known for a long time that Joffrey was not Robert's son. Do you think I'm an idiot? Cersei demanded of him as she turned to face him. Do you really want an answer to that? Tyrion mockingly asked. You shipped off my only daughter, and now you want to send both my eldest and youngest sons to the battlefield to die, Cersei accused. Cersei grit her teeth hard as the dwarf openly insulted her with her past sins. Tyrion, for his part, had slowly noticed over the years, as he developed a genuine and loving bond with Myrcella and Tommen, that he no longer cared about his bitch of a sister or his unfeeling asshole of a dad, who blames him like a child for something that was in no way, shape, or form, Tyrion's fault. Tyrion had come to finally stop blaming himself for his mother's death when Tommen researched the subject and brought the results to his attention. Young mothers, older mothers, poor or rich mothers, all could die, not only in childbirth but also due to complications afterwards. In fact, as many as 1 in 3 women die on average in childbirth. At some point after hearing this, Tyrion just subconsciously stopped trying to earn his sister and father's love, as he realized they would never change. Tyrion had Jaime, Tommen, and Myrcella. He had Kevan and Jenna, his father's younger siblings. He hoped now that Naruto was back, he could develop a genuine bond with him. He didn't need Cersei and Tywin. Do you know why Varys is so dangerous? Cersei asked. Because he has the best spy network in all of Westeros, bar none. Because he knows everything we do before we do it, Tyrion said, as these were valid reasons for considering Varys to be a dangerous man. Because he doesn't have a, Cersei said, implying he lacked the passions that drive most men. Neither do you, Tyrion pointed out. Being a eunuch would not make Tywin or Roose Bolton any more or less dangerous than they already are. Perhaps I'm dangerous, too, Cersei started, only to be interrupted by Tyrion. Oh please, don't jest, Cersei. Between you, me and Jaime, you're the least threatening. Jaime inherited our father's martial skill and talent for warfare, though he hasn't had a lot of time to develop the latter. I inherited Tywin's intellect, cunning, and political skill. You, on the other hand, only inherited his pettiness, cruelty, vanity, and his arrogance. So, nothing all that useful. You think you're as smart as our father, but the truth is you don't even come close to Tywin or me for that matter. Truth be told, your former husband was smarter than you. Tyrion insulted her. How dare you insult me, you worthless little dwarf? It's bad enough you killed my mother, now you dare to insult me. All Cersei's rant was again interrupted. Oh yes, get angry. Act like the spoiled, pathetic child you really are. Because it's so much easier to blame me for mother's death, despite the fact that yours and Jaime's birth nearly killed her. You and father don't understand that women die in childbirth all the time. It just doesn't happen as much to highborns because we have access to maesters, so highborn women have a better chance at surviving. I've blamed myself for a long time for that, but I am done. And you still getting angry over it after all these years just shows how pathetic you and father really are. Cersei was stunned by how he continued to insult her and couldn't find words to counter his argument. Naruto's back. Tyrion mentioned absent-mindedly, as if he hadn't just verbally tore his sister a new one. What? Cersei asked. That's right, Cersei. Naruto is back in King's Landing, with all 70,000 men of the Golden Company at his back. Oh, did I forget to tell you that he leads the company now? My mistake. Anyway, any ideas that you are forming to have me killed or assassinated, I'd recommend you rethink that. Their word's as good as gold, and if I die before their contract is fulfilled, they will destroy the entire city, saving you and Joffrey for last. With that, Tyrion waddled off, leaving his pathetic sister to sort out her own shock. Tower of the Hand. Next day Tyrion, Tommen, and Varys walked back into the Tower of the Hand to see Naruto, staring intently at a map of Westeros. Ah, nephew. I trust the preparations on the Mudgate are going well, Tyrion said. No response came from Naruto. How did he do it? Naruto asked as he took a swig from his wine cup. Who do you mean? Tyrion asked and Naruto turned to him. Stannis. Naruto said as he walked to the other side of the table and looked at the map. I've gone over this confrontation maybe 100 times since Tommen told me about it, and yet every time, I come to the same conclusion. Stannis should have been crushed. Renly had 20x more men than Stannis and had Mathis Rowan and Randall Tarley, two men who are arguably better than Stannis at military strategy. Tommen isn't comfortable talking about it, so I ask you again. How did Stannis beat Renly and acquire the Stormlander forces? Tyrion looked Tommen, who looked at Varys and jerked his head to Naruto, subtly telling Varys that Naruto needed to know what they knew. There are conflicting reports, my prince. Some of my little birds sing a tale of Renly being assassinated by his Kingsguard that was on duty that day. The member was Brienne of Tarth, only child of Selwyn Tarth. You sound like you have reason to doubt this claim, Naruto noted. If Brienne was truly working for Stannis, she would have defected to his side like the other Stormlanders did when they learned of Renly's death. Instead, she now protects the Lady Catelyn Stark. The other story is, which Lady Tarth claims to be truth, is that a shadow assassin with the face of Stannis killed Renly. Varys said, making Naruto lean on the table. And does Stannis have a red priestess in his service? Naruto asked with a dangerous tone in his voice. He does. He has even changed his sigil and added the fiery heart of the Lord of Light, the god the red priestesses, to it. Varys informed Naruto, causing him to slam his hands on the table. Then, he really did do it. Stannis murdered Renly. Naruto growled as he took deep breaths to maintain his cool and lose control of his Baratheon temper. A tear also slipped down his right cheek. Naruto had always been closer to Renly than his other uncles. That was because for him, Renly was the fun uncle. Renly would often get Naruto gifts of his favorite food every month. Renly introduced him to some of the Stormlander traditions and Baratheon traditions, like the stag hunt on the 13th. Naruto had to do his in Essos. Renly had introduced him to the basics of politics when he was young. Naruto still loved Robert as his father, but Renly had been the older brother he had hoped Joffrey would have been before Joffrey's insanity was revealed to him. Lord Stannis' conversion to the Red God R'hllor has left much dissension in his ranks, not least of which is the practice of burning people alive as sacrifices to the Lord of Light. Furthermore, on the eve of Lord Renly's death, Stannis was witnessed burning one of his bastard nieces by Robert at the stake by a Stormlander knight, and news of it has quickly spread through the camp. There are several Stormlords who were very unsettled by this event, Varys said. Can we turn those disgruntled lords to our side? Naruto asked as he wiped tear away. Yes, Prince Tommen had the same idea. A number of prominent Stormlander houses have secretly turned their cloak and will turn on Stannis when he attacks this city, as they have pledged their loyalty to Tommen as their Lord Paramount, since he is Robert's son and everyone still thinks you are dead, Varys said. Good, now if you will excuse me, I need to be alone for a while. Naruto as he made to walk past them. Tommen clasped his brother's shoulder and said, Will you be all right, brother? I know this is hard for you, since you and Renly were very close. I'll be okay, Tommen. I just need a day to myself, Naruto said as he left. Naruto probably wandered the streets of King's Landing for several, aimlessly as he walked back to his camp. Everywhere he went he could see poverty. He had always known it was there, but as a kid, he never truly saw how bad it was in King's Landing. The city was made to hold 200,000 people, but it was holding nearly triple that number right now. The air stunk because the drainage systems were old, broken and backed up. Children and even babies were starving to death as he saw a number that were skin and bone. Women who didn't even work in a brothel had to whore themselves out just so they could get the money to feed their families. It disgusted him. How these people, his people, were forced to live in such poverty. All because of his inbred cunt of brother that called himself king. Yeah, Naruto knew Joffrey was not his brother. He had checked the book that Pycelle had that held the names and descriptions of every member of every house in Westerosi history, which was easy to do because Pycelle was still in a black cell. Durandons and Baratheons subsequently, always had black hair and blue eyes. It did not matter if they married Tullys, Aarons, Tyrells, Gardeners, Starks, Myrtells, Danes, or even Lannisters. The Durandon, Baratheon features always won out, no contest. After he discovered this, he went to Varys and he confirmed Naruto's suspicions by telling him of his mother's confession of her adultery to Eddard Stark, which Varys had personally borne witness to, since he hid behind a pillar where nobody spotted him. During the next 2 days, he sent out feelers throughout his company, to see what the men would think if he had to become king. Surprisingly, most of his men wouldn't mind and would still follow him if he did become king, as it would give them a chance to settle down. With 2 nights left before Stannis showed up, Naruto made up his mind. Joffrey dies tonight. The Red Keep. Joffrey walked into his room in the Red Keep. He had just gotten his new sword and armor for the upcoming battle with Stannis, not that Joffrey knew a thing about fighting. Joffrey went through in his mind of all the disgusting, depraved things he would do to Sansa when he finally killed his uncle. Maybe he would let Esser Gregor have a go at her. Joffrey figured it would be a good punishment for Tommen since he interfered with his torment of Sansa. Flashback stop. Tommen thundered as he, Tyrion, and Bronn entered the throne room. The whole room parted as they made way for the 3 men. Tommen knelt before Sansa. Seeing her tear-streaked face was more than he could bear. He unclasped his cloak and draped it over her. What kind of knight beats a helpless girl? Tyrion asked with a glare. The kind who serves his king, imp. Esser Meryn retorted back with an insult. Careful now. Wouldn't want to get blood all over that pretty white cloak. Bronn taunted Meryn as Tommen helped her up to her feet and held her close. She is to be your queen. Have you no respect for her honor? Tyrion demanded of Joffrey. I'm punishing her. Joffrey said in that bratty, nasally voice of his that just makes people want to rupture their eardrums so they don't have to hear him. For what crimes? She doesn't fight her brother's battles, you brain-dead imbecile, Tommen shouted at Joffrey. You can't talk to me like that. The king can do as he likes, Joffrey shouted as he sat back on his throne. Maegor the Cruel, Baelor the Blessed, and Aerys the Mad all did as they liked, Tommen said as he stepped closer to Joffrey while leaving her with Tyrion. The first was assassinated for being too cruel. Baelor was delusional and starved himself to death, and like you, Aerys started a civil war when he executed the Warden of the North without just cause. Uncle Jaime never tell you what happened to him, Tommen cruelly stated. No one threatens his grace in the presence of the Kingsguard, Meryn stated as he had his hand on his sword. Oh, you think that was a threat? Tommen asked dangerously as he exploded with true Baratheon rage. Faster than Meryn could react, Tommen unsheathed his sword and with one fluid slash, cut open Meryn's throat. Tommen rounded on Boros Blunt, who was behind and sliced off both of his legs. The fat knight fell to the ground in pain, flailing around helplessly as Tommen sliced his right arm off before stabbing Blunt in the throat. Tommen then turned to Joffrey and pointed his sword at him, shouting, "If you or your Kingsguard ever hurt Sansa again, I will slaughter the rest of your Kingsguard and disembowel you from balls to brain." The lords and ladies of the court were stunned into silence. How couldn't they be? Tommen, the crown prince, had just executed 2 of the Kingsguard like they were nothing and threatened to do the same to Joffrey and the rest of the Kingsguard. Tommen then led Sansa away to comfort her, and Joffrey tried to hide the fact that he had shit his pants. Flashback end: Joffrey had avoided Sansa after that, hoping to avoid being killed until he could get Esser Gregor to do his bidding, and then he would put Tommen in his place. Then, he felt something prick his neck. Joffrey pulled it out to see a dart. He tried to move, but he couldn't get his arms and legs to respond as he fell to the ground. He tried to scream for help, but he couldn't speak. Only wheezes escaped his throat. "Hello, brother," Naruto said as he came into view, causing Joffrey to try to scream, but only pained wheezes escaped his throat. "Yeah, don't bother trying to scream for help. You've been injected with a poison." He paused for Joffrey's muted wheezes before continuing, "Don't worry, it's not the kind that can kill you. It leaves you paralyzed and takes away your ability to speak." Naruto picked him up and threw him on the bed. "You know, I kinda blame myself for this war that is currently ravaging the country. If only I had killed you back then. Well, let's fix that." Naruto pulls out a knife and cut Joffrey's mouth open from ear to ear. Joffrey's pained wheezes filled his ear. "I do admit, I would like to hear your screams, but I can't take the chance of someone hearing you and messing this up." Naruto gripped Joffrey's head with both of his hands, his thumbs pointed at Joffrey's eyes. Naruto's thumbs glowed wildfire green. He plunged them into Joffrey's eyes, burning them out, producing wheezed screams from Joffrey. Naruto pulled out his thumbs and examined the burned-out eye sockets of his half-brother. "Don't worry, bastardy, thrown for you. Better than you ever did, at any rate." Naruto smirked as he sliced Joffrey's throat open. He then plunged his hand into Joffrey's chest. He gripped his heart, disconnected the arteries from it and ripped it out of his chest. Naruto got off the bed and went over to the table, where he had placed a plate of cheese earlier. He put the plate of cheese next to the bastard and put the heart on it. He wiped his hand off on the bed before pulling out a letter that claimed the assassination was all Stannis' doing and placing it on the bed. "Now, time to go celebrate," Naruto said to himself as he disappeared in a flash of speed. He had this really beautiful red-haired whore waiting back in his tent, who was being occupied by his clone. He intended to have loads of fun tonight. One day ago, Cersei sat in her chambers sipping some wine. She had been gulping down a lot more wine than usual after her son became king and Jaime was captured. And after the revelation of her son Naruto being back, she had drank damn near a whole pitcher of wine last night. Naruto. He had been her first child with Robert. Jaime had not been too happy to see that Naruto was not his son. Her and Jaime's relationship had taken a turn for the worse after that. No matter that she would lay with Jaime multiple times a week for the last 20 years, she just could not get pregnant with his child again. It was as if the gods themselves had judged their union as unholy and conspired to make it so they could not sire any more children together. After she gave him Tommen and Myrcella, Robert had left her alone, going back to his old ways, while giving his fatherly attention to his true children, and ignoring Joffrey completely. She tried to go back to Jaime, but it wasn't the same. She had 3 children with Robert and she knew who the better lover was. While she still loved her twin and he could still pleasure her well, she couldn't deny that she longed for Robert's touch again and was denied it at every turn. It frustrated her to no end. She had nearly cried out Robert's name when she was in bed with Jaime a number of times over the years. She had tried to be a good mother to her trueborn children, and she did love them, but they were still the children of the man that she hated, while her little Joff was the son she had with the man she loved. She gave most of her attention to her pure Lannister son, and while she tried to show she loved her black-haired children, she could not get past the fact that they were Robert's children. Her mind had wandered briefly to one of her last conversations with Robert. Flashback: "I felt something for you once, you know," Cersei said to Robert. "I know," he muttered grimly. "Was it ever possible for us? Was there ever a time? Ever a chance?" Robert looked at Cersei miserably. After a few moments he gave the slightest of nods. "Yes, there was. When Naruto, and then Tommen and Myrcella after him were born, I was the happiest I had been since Lyanna's death. I thought maybe I could try again with you. But I was too late. You already decided that you hated me. Flashback end, and now look at her. Her little Joff was turning into a monster more and more every day, and had already threatened to kill her when she smacked him for being so stupid as to kill all of Robert's bastards. Tommen and Marcella despised her for never punishing Joffrey for the things he did and had more or less declared that she was not their mother. And they blamed her for them losing Naruto to slavery. And privately, she agreed with them. She had been hysterical when her Joff had been nearly killed for attacking Naruto. Seeing her little boy bloody and half dead made her not think straight. That maybe her other son was in extreme pain and Joffrey was being cruel doing that to him. All she had wanted was to keep Naruto away from Joffrey so that didn't happen again, and then, her second son was captured by Euron Greyjoy and sold into slavery. And now, he is back, having made the Golden Company into a true army and fought in over 100 battles. Tommen was all grown up. A proud, fiercely independent, physically powerful, and headstrong warrior, his fostering and Baratheon temperament made him into everything a Baratheon male should be. He bested her brother in combat at 14, which was unthinkable to her. He saved Tyrion from being thrown out the Aaron's Moondor by killing the Aaron champion, who had more experience than he did. He fought in the battle on the Green Fork, killing 40 men. And now he was helping her vile little brother prepare the city for siege. But there was also a problem. Tommen was in love with Sansa. Probably a byproduct of his fostering with Eddard Stark. She hadn't paid much attention to it in the beginning. But then Tommen killed 2 members of his brother's Kingsguard, and threatened to do the same to the rest of the guard and Joffrey if he touched Sansa again. He had also rescued her from being raped and killed in that riot after Myrcella was sent away to Dorne. Myrcella. Now there was somewhere she truly had failed. Her daughter was kind and sweet, a true lady and great beauty to boot. Yet like Tommen, fiercely independent, strong-willed, and absolutely viscous when angered, as evidenced when she and Tommen ganged up on Joffrey and nearly killed him, mirroring their elder brother Naruto's actions many years earlier. Like her twin, Myrcella openly despised her mother for never defending her and Tommen from Joffrey, and for letting Naruto suffer in agony from his burns. She was not ready to face her son. Unfortunately for her, fate was a cruel bitch when it wanted to be, as Naruto was in the doorway, leaning against the doorway as Cersei took another swig of wine. "Did you always drink that much wine?" he asked as he walked in the door, "or is this something you've been doing recently?" "Naruto," Cersei said, failing to find the words to express her joy at her son being returned to her alive, even though he was the biggest threat to Joffrey's reign, and possibly herself. "Hello mother," Naruto said snidely. As a young girl, back when she still hoped to marry Rhaegar, Maggie the Frog had given her a prophecy. 3 children you will have with the stag, and 1 more from the lion. You will scorn the young fawns for this. But the eldest fawn will be the one that will make you the most proud. He shall be the bane of your lion but be the shield for the fawns. Scarred by the flames of the wild, the elder fawn shall break his chains to become a stag and live amongst golden skulls in the east. The younger fawns will grow into a fierce stag and a beautiful doe. They will remove themselves from the lion's pack in their wrath, only associating with the stunted lion. Gold will be the lion's crown, gold his shroud. The burnt stag will return with his golden skulls and claim his rightful throne, and be such a force that the greatest players will either stand beside him or fall. And he shall be your salvation and your downfall. Now, Cersei understood the prophecy, as her life had played out exactly as it had said. She had 1 child with Jaime, a lion, and 3 with Robert. She had scorned Robert's children, and Naruto, the burnt stag, had shielded his youngest siblings. Tommen and Myrcella grew up and disassociated themselves from the Lannisters, preferring their father's company and Tyrion's. Naruto escaped slavery and now lead the Golden Company, and if he was back, then Joffrey's life was in danger. Cersei couldn't even find the words to say, her emotions torn between him being a threat to Joffrey and that her son had returned. "Do you have nothing to say to me? It was your fault that I was on that ship when Euron attacked and sold me into slavery. I wouldn't change what happened to me, but it doesn't change the fact that I would never have been on that ship, if you had simply tried to understand that Joffrey really hurt me. It's true that I just a bit, but Joffrey shouldn't have attacked me at all," Naruto said. Cersei was silent and Naruto sighed, thinking that this pointless, turn around to walk out, when Cersei put her wine and rose in her seat, pleading with him, "Don't go. Naruto turned his head to look behind him and said, "You never could get past the fact that me, Tommen and Marcella didn't inherit the Lannister coloring. You hated our father, and you couldn't punish him, so you took it out on us, and didn't punish Joffrey when hurt us." "Yes, I did." Cersei admitted in a whisper that he heard. "Why? What did he do to make you hate him? Why did you hate us?" Naruto asked as he turned to her. "I didn't hate you and your siblings, just Robert. I once worshipped him when I saw him on our wedding day. Tall, strong and handsome. It was one of the happiest moments of my life. But when the time came to consummate our marriage, he came in stinking of wine and called me, Lyanna. Lord Stark's sister was a corpse and I was a living girl, but he loved her more than me," Cersei explained. "And you think that's an excuse? For what you did to us? For abandoning us?" Naruto demanded. No, it isn't," Cersei said. Then she did something that he didn't expect. "I'm sorry." "What?" Naruto asked, clearly not expecting this. "I'm sorry that I overreacted when Joffrey attacked you. I should have taken your perspective into account, but all I could think of was Joffrey nearly dying. I'm sorry that I wanted you exiled and it ended up costing you your freedom. And I'm sorry for not loving you and your siblings enough," Cersei confessed as she cried. "Are you going to give up on me like your siblings?" "I'd like to. It would be easier," Naruto admitted, and Cersei sniffled a little. "But I spent a long time being angry over what happened. And now, I just want my mother back." "Do you think we can find a way back to being mother and son?" Cersei wondered as she wiped her tears away. "I don't know, but I'm willing to try," Naruto said, and Cersei smiled for the first time. "But not today. I have to make sure Stannis doesn't take the city." Naruto left the room after that, and Cersei smiled as she felt a burden lift off her shoulders. It wouldn't last though. The morning after Naruto killed Joffrey, sleeping next to him, her head resting on his chest, was this beautiful red-headed whore named Rose. She was originally a whore from the north but moved down to King's Landing for better opportunities. "Morning, beautiful," Naruto said, and Rose smiled. "It is a beautiful morning, my prince," Rose returned. "I haven't had a good fuck in a month. That did me some good." Naruto chuckled as Rose softly circled his muscled chest with her slender, index finger. "I wonder what the king would say if he learnt you, his brother, spent even a little time fucking us whores." She smiled impishly. "What can I say?" Naruto murmured, smirking. "I am the son of the Whoremonger King, after all," Rose said. "Do you wish for more?" Rose asked. "Normally, I would. But Stannis is arriving tonight. Need to meet the Hand and my other brother to prepare." Naruto said. He got up and put pants on. Rose put her shoes and dress back on when he held out a pouch with some gold dragons, and Rose took it and opened the pouch. There was 6 times the standard rate for whores in this pouch. She looked at him in surprise. "I did keep you here all night." "I like to think I'm a generous prince, after all," Naruto said with a smile. Rose smiled as she opened the tent to walk out, but stopped and looked back at him. "From now on, you can have me for free whenever you wish, my prince," Rose said honestly. She wanted to be thoroughly fucked again like she had been last night. "I'll hold you to that, Rose," Naruto said, and the whore smiled as he remembered her name as she left. Later, Naruto walked into the Red Keep, dressed in his armor with his helmet off. That's when he heard the screams. Cersei's screams echoed throughout the Red Keep. "No. No. No. Joffrey. No. She was found inside the bedchamber by her brother and 2 sons, holding the body of her child. Joffrey was pale, having his eyes burned out, his throat slit, and his heart ripped out. Cersei was beside herself with grief. Her only child with Jaime was now dead. Naruto reached over to Cersei. "Mother." Cersei shrunk back as if Naruto's hand was on fire. "Get away from me, Pycelle. Bring me Pycelle, now." The next person who had entered the room 10 minutes later was Pycelle, after he was let out of the black cells. He quickly made his way to the king, but you didn't need to be a maester to know the boy was dead. My apologies, your grace. The king is dead," Pycelle said, and Cersei cried even harder. Naruto looked at the 2 Kingsguard, Esser Osmond Kettleback and Esser Mandan Moore, whose throats he had slit so they couldn't interfere, and then hid them in Joffrey's room when he was done. Naruto placed his hand on his mother's shoulder. "Mom," Naruto said. "No," Cersei said. Naruto, being far stronger, pulled her away from Joffrey's body and hugged her tightly to his chest to prevent her from holding Joffrey. "I'm sorry, Mom," Naruto whispered, but he totally wasn't. "He's gone. He can't be, she sobbed against his shoulder. After letting her grieve for a bit, he pinched one of her pressure points, letting her fall unconscious. He handed her to Esser Balan Swan. "Take her to her chambers and lay her down. Pycelle, give her a little essence of nightshade." Pycelle, recognizing Naruto, nodded and Esser Balan carried her away. Could not have happened at a worse time," Tyrion said. He could care less that Joffrey was dead. But Stannis would be here tonight. This was the worst time it could have happened. The only thing that could make this worse is if Stannis was behind this. "You aren't wrong," Naruto said as he picked up the note and read it. "The bastard was not my brother's son. He should have given up the throne when Lord Stark was declared protector of the realm. Now, in the light of the Lord Stark is avenged, and come the dawn, the throne will be mine. Stannis Baratheon, first of his name, King of the Andals and the First Men, Lord of the Seven Kingdoms, and Protector of the realm. Our traitor uncle has a sick sense of humor," Naruto said as he handed the note off to Tommen. "What do you mean?" Tyrion asked. "The plate of blood and cheese. Ring any bells?" Naruto asked as Tyrion got the hint. "The story of blood and cheese," Tyrion explained. "During the Dance of the Dragons, Queen Rhaenyra's husband Daemon Targaryen sent 2 men into the Red Keep to avenge the death of her son Lucerys. One a big hulking butcher named Blood and small ratcatcher named Cheese." "Yes, I remember the story now," Tommen realized. "They snuck into the Holdfast to kill Aegon II's heir. But this is a bit of a weak twist on the story. Joffrey was already the king. Doesn't really matter. We can't let news of this get out, not until after we win," Naruto said, and Tommen was a little slower to catch on, while Tyrion got the idea. "The common folk already hate Joffrey for causing the war. If they find out that he's dead, they may just overwhelm the men defending the city and let Stannis in," Tyrion said, and Tommen nodded in realization. "So, we're going to do what Alicent Hightower when she found out her husband was dead, then," Tommen said. "It will only be for a day, as opposed to a week. We'll reveal it after the battle. Throw every guard and maid in this part of the castle in the black cells so news doesn't get out. Tonight, we put Stannis down once and for all." Naruto swore and the 2 occupants nodded. King's Landing night of the Battle Red Keep. The throne room was dimly lit by the large braziers surrounding the pillars, an orange glow permeating throughout the room. The bell still booming out as Tommen arrived there with Naruto and officers of the Golden Company. The only Kingsguard that remained, Esser Balan Swan, was guarding Tommen, as only a few people in King's Landing knew of Naruto's survival. Tommen held out their father's warhammer for Naruto, and Naruto was hesitant to take. "I'm not worthy of that," Naruto said. "He would have wanted you to have it, brother," Tommen insisted, and Naruto hesitantly took his father's weapon into his hands. "Get Lady Sansa to Maegor's Holdfast, Tommen," Naruto said. "I'll see you on the battlements." Sansa just stood there with a small smile on her lips as Tommen waited for them to depart before making his way over to her. "Sansa, you should be in Maegor's Holdfast," Tommen said gently. "I'm heading there now, Tommen. I just had to see you," Sansa told him. "You best hurry," Tommen noted, listening to the bells. "I can't imagine Stannis will be far away." Sansa nodded, curtsying. "I'll pray to the old gods for your safe return. And the warrior to grant me strength, I hope," Tommen said as he drew closer and held her hands in his. "After this is over, everything is going to change for the better, for both of us." Sansa wanted to ask what he meant and who the other stag-themed warrior was who spoke to him, but Tommen gave her a quick peck on the lips. Sansa blushed at Tommen's actions and feared for him if Joffrey saw. "My lady, Sansa's handmaiden, and Tyrion's secret lover," Shae said as she came up to them. "I'll make it back to you. I promise," Tommen said as he hurried out to join his brother and uncle, Esser Balan, traveling behind him. As Sansa turned to move to the Holdfast, she prayed for Tommen's safe return, so she could tell him how much she loved him. Blackwater Bay at the Mud Gate, men donned their armor and picked their best weapons, while in the harbor, a ship was loaded with thousands of jars of what the Brawn called pig shit. On Stannis vessels, however, there was silence, with the exception of a man occasionally becoming seasick and vomiting into the barrels nearby or over the side of the ship. The tide is against us, Mathos said to his father, Sir Davos. Aye, but the wind is with us, Sir Davos said, calmer due to his experience. She will blow us straight to the gates. You are coming home, Mathos said, remembering that his father and mother had actually been born in King's Landing in Flea Bottom. His father, however, thought differently. King's Landing has not been my home for 20 years. He chuckled as memories of his misspent youth came back to him. I spent most of my time dodging the royal fleet and now I am sailing right at them. Mathos felt the need to reassure his father. This is the royal fleet. And you are not a smuggler anymore, you are the High Captain. Mathos's confidence was not echoed by his father, who was grounded in reality. Of course, there are several royal fleets at the moment, Davos mentioned. Not after tonight, Mathos said, still filled with such youthful confidence that it brought both warmth to his father's slightly jaded heart and exasperation at his near-fanatical certainty in their victory. When the sun rises, Stannis will sit on the Iron Throne and you will be his hand. Gods be good, Davos said, hoping that they were listening and would not desert them tonight after all he had seen be done in Stannis' name. God, Mathos said, expressing his fanatic devotion to the Lord of Light to his father's concern. Father, there is only one and he watches over us all. But not over them, Davos asked his son, hoping to shake his belief in the Red God whose cult disturbed Davos more than he could say. Over all of us, Mathos told him with complete certainty. The people of King's Landing did not choose the false king, Joffrey Baratheon. They will be glad to see his head on a spike. Well, first we have to put it there, Davos said, trying to remind his son that the battle had not even begun yet. Our ships outnumber theirs by 10 to 1 and our army by over 3 to 1, Mathos said, seemingly unsettled at the notion that they might fail. Those walls have never been breached by an attack or siege, Davos reminded his son. And the men guarding those walls will not see a liberator, they see invader coming to set their city on fire. The glimmer of doubt that Davos had been glad to see then died in Mathos' eyes as the fanatic took hold once again. I have faith in the Lord of Light. I have faith in our cause, he told his father with complete certainty, but then with a quieter voice he added. And I have faith in my captain. Despite the rumbling of thunder overhead, Davos could not help himself but hope at that moment that his eldest son might not be lost to the fanatics just yet. As the fleet was spotted through the fog, bells rang out across King's Landing to signify and all the men on both sides prepared for battle. They are welcoming the new king, Mathos said as he heard the city bells in the distance. Sir Davos gritted his teeth knowing full well that the opposite was true. I have never known those bells to mean surrender, he said bitterly, knowing that the fight would soon be upon them. They want to play music with us, then let's play. Drums, he ordered, and his son cried out loudly to the rest of the crew. The drummer began his intimidating tune while other ships followed their lead. Walls of the mud gate on the walls of the city. Naruto in his armor with his helmet in his arms stood with his officers, and Tommen, who was dressed in similar Baratheon armor, but his was not colored. The men of the Golden Company were spread out amongst 5 different gates. Archers were in place, the cavalry was ready, and 1,000 Golden Company men lined the beach in phalanx formation, ready to destroy the first to land on the beach. Tyrion and Podrick joined them on the walls and stared out across the bay, where the sound of Stannis' drums could be heard in the distance, coming closer and closer. Have the ships departed? Naruto asked. Yes, Tyrion answered without looking. Then we wait, Naruto said as he, Tommen, and Tyrion stared out into the bay. Stannis thought he was sailing here to take a throne and sack a city, when in reality he was sailing into a slaughter. Davos's ship on Davos' ship. The former smuggler was growing concerned as they had not yet made contact with the enemy like he had expected. Where are their ships? He asked out loud. It was wise to attack at night. We have taken them by surprise, Mathos said grandly, youthful overconfidence on full display again. Davos knew better though. Lord Varys knows what you had for breakfast 3 days ago and what color your shit looks like. There are no surprises here, Davos said. If it is true that there is dissension in their ranks, maybe their sailors have mutinied, Mathos said. Maybe, Davos said, but it was said quietly. The fog started to break and both enemies could now see each other. Naruto called out his order to the men. Archers to their marks. The captains then echoed his command. Archers to the marks. The men carrying the bows and crossbows stepped forward, readying their weapons and ready to knock their arrows. The tension in the air was nearly overwhelming as they waited. Tyrion had never felt such a state in his life but stayed cool. Then two ships that left the harbor from Naruto's side came into view, going out against the enemy just as Tyrion had planned. The reason there was a second ship was because Naruto had found what remained of the old Wildfire that was from Ares' reign when he questioned Wisdom Hallen about it and put them on the second ship. Davos' ships meanwhile Esser Davos and Mathos were now able to see the two ships that were coming to meet them. Even the die-hard Mathos was confused. There are only two ships, Mathos said. His father looked intently at the loser to the fleet and Davos's honed instincts were telling him he was in danger, but he gave his orders. Archers, stand to, Davos said. Man the below. Knock. The men followed orders and prepared their weapons to fire, but Davos ordered them to hold fire. As the ships came along, both sides of his ship suddenly realized that he could see no one on either deck and his feelings of impending doom grew stronger. He called out to the men. There is no one on board either ship. On the walls, Tyrion was handed a torch by Hallen. Naruto nodded to him and Tyrion threw his torch into the air where Bronn and Black Balak were with their flaming arrows could see it from either side of the bay. At that same moment, Esser Davos finally saw the green liquid flowing out of the back of one of the deserted ships and gave quick orders as he realized the danger they were in. Wildfire. Steer clear. Steer clear. His voice was desperate. Time seemed to slow down as Bronn and Black Balak each fired his arrow. Esser Davos was powerless to do anything as both arrows struck the discolored waters, and as the flames trailed closer to the ships, Davos turned to his son and cried out. Mathos, get down. Only a split second later, the ships erupted in a colossal explosion of green fire. Esser Davos only caught a glimpse of his son. It would be the last he would ever have as Esser Davos and his son were engulfed by the wildfire. From his own ship further back, Stannis witnessed the explosion and averted his eyes from the intense light, the blast of the killing nearly 10,000 of his 35,000 men. On the walls of the city, with the exception of Naruto and the pyromancer Hallen, the army tired to avert their gaze. The screams of Stannis's men filled the air as they caught fire and the green flames began to eat through their clothes, armor, and flesh. Some tried to jump overboard to douse the flames, but it was no use. Wildfire could only be put out by being drowned in sand. On the walls, Tyrion and Tommen tried to ignore the screams like many of their men, but all felt the horror as they saw at a distance the pain and suffering that they just put those men through. Only the pyromancer was smiling. Naruto glared out at the bay with a hardened gaze. He himself knew the pain those men were experiencing and he would not wish it on anyone, but he would rather thin the ranks of Stannis's loyalists, since Tommen's turncloaks were in the very back. Stannis's ship on his own flagship, Stannis was looking at the devastation with a small amount of horror. Seeing the terrified looks of the men around him, his resolve to take the throne took hold and he gave his next order. Prepare to land. Your Grace. One of the men objected in fear and horror of what they had just witnessed, but Stannis remained firm and determined. The dwarf has played his little trick, he can only play it once, Stannis said. We are too far from the gates. The fire, they're archers. Hundreds will die. One man said, sounding dejected and demoralized, making Stannis realize he needed to be unwavering, else his men would sense that and desert. Thousands. Stannis corrected, knowing that it was now or never. He threw the cover off the small boats and turned to face his men, who all had terror in their eyes, and decided to take matters into his own hands. Come with me and take this city. Leading from the front was always risky, but seeing their king and commander charge into the fires ahead of them did the trick of restoring their morale as Stannis climbed into the small boat followed by his men. City walls. Tyrion saw the boats coming towards the shore as the fire burned out and felt a lump forming in his throat as thousands of men came closer to him with the intention of putting his head on a spike. He is a serious man, Stannis Baratheon, Tyrion said and turned to Naruto. Fire. Naruto ordered as Stannis' men got closer. The archers drew back their bows and finally let their arrows fly with fire burning at their tips. The catapults launched boulders into the enemy as they closer to the shore. Stannis now felt his confidence strengthen as his feet touched the sand of the shore. The flaming arrows all around him pierced his men, and boulders flung from the catapults crushed some of his boats before they reached the shore, but still, he pressed on. Tyrion watched carefully as the sigils of the different houses under Stannis' command came ashore until he saw the ones that he wanted to find at the rear of Stannis' army as they should be. Naruto waited as the phalanx held for 10 minutes, and when the phalanx started to become overwhelmed as the 25,000 remaining men landed on the beach, Naruto grabbed a bow and arrow and aimed. Channeling his power, Wildfire covered the arrow and he let the arrow fly into the air, the wildfire covered arrow, traveling up and exploding like a small firework. Stannis' men were confused by what this meant. At the rear of Stannis' forces, Lord Caron saw the explosion and then gave new orders. Drop the flaming heart banner and form the shield wall. We're through with these heretics, Lord Caron called out, followed by a cheer of their men, who dropped the banners of Stannis in the sand and held their own house banners proudly, while forming a shield wall behind the lines of Stannis' army, made up of the 15,000 men of houses of Caron, Penrose, Connington, Tarth, Estermont, Swan, Merton, Selmy, Hasty and Morrigan. At the opposing ends of the beach, Harry Strickland saw the green explosion go off in the night sky as clear as day. He would admit to being impressed at what Tyrion, Tommen, and Naruto had planned, with Tyrion secretly making alliances with houses dissatisfied with Stannis and bringing them to Tommen's own side, Tommen organizing the Lannister and City Watch's part of the defense, while Naruto secretly moved 15,000 cavalry to the north of the Mud Gate and another 15,000 infantry to the south and 40,000 spread out amongst the other gates within the city. It was brilliant and had the potential to end Stannis as a threat once and for all. So with the plan in their minds and their horses and men ready, the cavalry charged. Stannis and his men were nearly past the phalanx and he about to bring forth ladders or a battering ram to break open the gate when he heard a cry from Lord Alistair Florent. "Your Grace, we are being attacked from the rear." Stan stopped, turned and looked around to see 15,000 of his rear guard attacking his other 10,000 troops. Rage boiled inside of him as he realized he had been betrayed. However, as he reeled from the dilemma he was currently presented with, he was horrified to hear battle horns coming from both the north and the south of him. Looking with dread, he was horrified to see 15,000 cavalry of the Golden Company charging toward them from the north and a phalanx of 15,000 marching swiftly towards his men from the south. He was infuriated. How did Tyrion secure the Golden Company and how did they get here without his men noticing? He was not able to ponder as he found himself within a four-sided pincer move with no idea how it had happened or how to escape. Naruto inside the walls, Naruto breathed deep and turned to address his men. "Men of King's Landing and the Golden Company, Stannis Baratheon came here to steal a throne that doesn't belong to him and let his despicable priests of the Red God on us. His men came to rape, pillage, and plunder like fucking Ironborn, and sacrifices for their heathen god. Instead, they have found us waiting for them and the trap has been sprung. While we stand together, no invader shall pass through those gates. Let him come with all the barbarians and heathens of the world. They shall not pass, and when this battle is ended, we meet again in seven heavens or on the fields of victory. Come with me and end this rebellion," he called out as he finished by raising his father's warhammer high into the air, and the men were emboldened by high preparing themselves as they followed closely behind Naruto, Tommen, and Tyrion. The gates opened and Naruto and the men sallied forth, charging forward as the battle was there. Naruto used his father's warhammer to block a sword strike as he ran, and using his momentum, he pivoted, and turned the enemy's face to mush as the hammer hit the enemy's unprotected face. Tommen cut through several of Stannis' loyalists before making beeline for Stannis, cutting down every fool that got in his way. Tyrion had ran at a slower pace, giving his small stature. He came up behind a sellsword who had his back turned, and swung his small battle axe, surprising himself as he chopped the sellsword leg off. He followed up quickly by bringing his axe down on the sellsword's face, killing him. With Stannis was fighting hard, his body operating on instinct as he cut down many of the soldiers who tried to take away his victory. His loyalists saw no end in sight, and surrounded from all sides, they tried to force their way through and flee. "No. Stand and fight," Stannis cried out as his men started to pull him away. "Your Grace," Esser Imry Florent shouted at Stannis as he came up in front of him. "The battle is lost. We must." The Florent knight did not receive another chance to speak as chopped his head clean off. Stannis, Tommen growled, angry at the uncle who he once looked up to betraying them. Tommen. Robert would be disappointed if he knew that you were serving Joffrey. You are unworthy of being his son, Stannis stated, in spite of how desperate his situation. You have no right to talk about my father after you murdered Uncle Renly, Kinslayer, Tommen shouted. You dare call me that? Stannis asked as they circled each other. I dare because it's true. You couldn't have possibly beaten Renly in battle, he had 100,000 troops. You obviously had him assassinated, which makes you a Kinslayer, Tommen shouted as he cut some poor sap down who tried to attack him. It's only kinslaying when you do the deed yourself. Renly should have bent the knee to me, instead, he rose against me, making himself a false king, and tried to take what was mine. Besides, he would have killed me if I hadn't done it to him. Stannis shouted back as he cut down a Lannister soldier. You don't know that, Tommen shouted, and that was when the head of Lord Alistair Florent landed between them with its spine still attached. Stannis and Tommen both looked to see who did that. Tommen. Naruto shouted as he walked forward, holding Robert's bloodied warhammer in one hand. He came up beside him and said, Go deal with the traitors from Renly's Rainbow Guard. Stannis is mine to kill. Tommen looked to see Esser Gyard Morrigan and Esser Parman Crane. These men had been part of Renly's Kingsguard, aptly named the Rainbow Guard, but they switched sides to Stannis right after Renly died. Begrudgingly, he made his way towards them. Stannis noted Robert's bloodied warhammer as Naruto held it in both hands. You dare wield that in my presence? That warhammer belonged to my brother, Stannis growled through grinding teeth. I wield by right of blood, because he would have wanted me to have it. Because Robert Baratheon was my father, and I am his most treasured son, Naruto shouted. Stannis furrowed his eyebrows. It wasn't Tommen, as he was fighting Gyard Morrigan and Parman Crane. It couldn't be Joffrey. This knight was too large, too well built. It could only be Naruto, Stannis growled. Hello, traitor, Naruto said calmly as he rested the long handle of the warhammer on his shoulder. I thought you were dead, Stannis said, as everyone thought he was dead after Yunkai was sacked by the Golden Company. Not quite. I survived and joined the ones who destroyed the city, and now I lead them. Naruto said calmly and coolly as he stared as he gripped the neck of some Stannis loyalist that tried to attack him and snapped his with one hand. So tell me, has all those years you spent being a bitter, uptight man make you forget how the laws of succession work? It doesn't matter. Your blood is tainted by your mother's blood and actions, boy. You and Tommen are as unworthy of the throne as Joffrey Waters, Stannis shouted as he pointed Lightbringer at Naruto. Says the one who laid with a red priestess to kill his brother in a mad grab for power. I spent half my life in Essos, Stannis. I know how shadow assassins are made. Naruto said, as Stannis swiped his sword at Naruto, who blocked it with Robert's warhammer, hitting the handle. One of Robert's secrets is that his warhammer, which Robert had named Dragonslayer since he killed Rhaegar, the last dragon, Targaryen, with it, was made entirely of Valyrian steel, so the weapon was indestructible, and was light enough that Robert could wield it one-handed and fight for hours with it. I wield a holy sword, nephew. You cannot best me, shouted Stannis, while Naruto looked on, unimpressed. The sword does not make the man. You could have Dawn in your hands and it wouldn't change a thing, Naruto said as he forced Stannis away before swinging the warhammer in a downward arc, and Stannis had to roll out of the way, narrowly avoided having his head bashed in. You know nothing, boy, Stannis growled as they clashed, but it was clear from Stannis's struggling and Naruto's calmer expression that Stannis was weaker than Naruto. I know that you are unworthy of being a Baratheon. That you are not worthy of being your father's son, my father's and Renly's brother, or mine, Myrcella and Tommen's uncle. I'd sooner enjoy an orgy of whores with Uncle Tyrion than call you my kin. You won't be buried with your ancestors. Your actions make you unworthy of that honor, Naruto insulted as he punched Stannis in the face, causing him to stumble away a bit. Personally, Naruto felt like he was being a bit of a hypocrite here, but there was a difference between killing the madman on the throne to make way for a better ruler and more peaceful times, and killing your own brother whose life you once saved in a mad grab for power. Stannis was enraged and attacked Naruto again, but his weapon was parried away and he narrowly avoided having his face bashed in when Naruto swung the hammer. Stannis picked up a shield that had been dropped by a dead shoulder and able to block the hammer, but he felt the pain in his arm when he did so. He did not get to wait long, as Naruto used the hook on the hammer to pull away the shield from Stannis. Their weapons clashed again and Stannis was able to redirect the hammer to the ground, but Naruto backhanded him with his armored fist, causing blood to fly from Stannis' mouth as he stumbled away. Naruto came at Stannis again and Stannis avoided the downward blow and tried to stab Naruto in the stomach, but Naruto was quicker, dodging the attack by pivoting and swinging his hammer, Stannis only avoiding it because he backpedaled. Naruto moved towards Stannis and swung the warhammer, and Stannis tried to meet his nephew, but this time, Naruto swung so hard that when their weapons met, the force Naruto generated made Stannis stumble back. Naruto swung the warhammer in an upwards diagonal arc, and Stannis was able to block it again, but strength of Naruto's blow again forced him to backpedal. Naruto rammed his shoulder into Stannis' chest, forcing him to fall on his back. Naruto swung the hammer toward Stannis' face and Stannis barely avoided the attack. Naruto swung toward the earth several times, Stannis managing to roll away and avoid the attacks every time. Stannis pulled himself to his feet and swung his sword at Naruto's neck while Naruto swung his father's warhammer again, but this time, he had a different target than Stannis' head. The warhammer hit Stannis' hands, causing his left hand and the fingers on his right hand to be turned into a bloody mess and the sword to fly away. While Stannis shouted in pain, Naruto swung the warhammer and destroyed Stannis' la swung upwards, intending to knock Stannis' head off and clean into the air. Unfortunately, in an attempt to avoid the death blow, Stannis backed away, only to trip over one of the bodies behind him. He fell back, but not before the hammer caught the front edge of his jaw, breaking it. Naruto held his hammer in his hands as Stannis staggered to his feet, determined to seat himself on the throne that he believed to be his, even though he was about to die. "Kill me and be damned," Stannis said. "You are no kin of mine. I strip you of the name of Baratheon and recognize no blood ties to you. None of my family do. When you die, you will be known as Stannis No Name." Naruto said as he stalked closer, "This is for Renly." Naruto swung the hammer hard, hitting Stannis in the chest, shattering his armor, breaking all of his front ribs and causing him to hunch over. He raised the warhammer up and swung it down onto Stannis' back, shattering the light armor, breaking his back ribs and nearly shattering his spine. Stannis fell to his knees in pain, propped up only by his hands. Naruto pulled the hammer back and swung it towards Stannis' head in a clockwise arc, connecting directly with the top of Stannis' head. As if by magic, Stannis' head seemed to collapse into his neck and the head exited his body out of his back, tearing a massive gaping hole in Stannis' back, and the head landed 20 feet away as blood and guts flew everywhere. 1. Naruto looked around to see Tommen had killed the traitorous knights of Renly's Kingsguard and Tyrion was still alive, relatively uninjured. Naruto raised his father's warhammer high and shouted, "Victory is ours." The men all mirrored their leader, raising their weapons high as they cheered in victory. The next day the court was bustling with activity as various lords and ladies mingled while they waited for King Joffrey to come in and begin this particular session of court. So they were more than a bit curious when Naruto came in, dressed in his armor though he did not have his helmet, joined up near the Iron Throne by an all-black wearing Cersei, Tommen, Tyrion, Harry Strickland, his other officers of the Golden Company, and Varys. Esser Balin Swan stood guard, since besides Esser Aris, who was in Dorne protecting Myrcella, Balin was the only Kingsguard left as the other four were dead and the Hound deserted before the Battle of Blackwater Bay. Good day, lords and ladies of the realm. Before we begin this session of court and begin with distributing the awards for the participants in the battle, I have some announcements to make. Naruto said as he stood in front of the Iron Throne, his hands resting on the handle of Robert's bloodied warhammer, while the hammer part rests on the ground. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Naruto Baratheon, second-born son of Robert Baratheon, the Wildfire Knight, and Captain General of the Golden Company. The lords and ladies whispered among themselves as Naruto let that sink in for a moment before he continued. "I'll regale the court with my life story another time. That is not important right now. The next piece of business is that the night before the battle, King Joffrey of houses Baratheon and Lannister, the first of his name, King of the Andals and the First Men, Lord of the Seven Kingdoms, and Protector of the Realm, was killed in his sleep. When he was found by my mother the next morning, his 2 Kingsguard were found with their throats slashed. Joffrey's eyes had been burned out, his throat slashed, and his heart ripped out. A handwritten note by Stannis claimed that he was responsible for this atrocity. Naruto said as he blamed it all on Stannis, who couldn't refute his claims, because he was dead. On the battlefield, Stannis Baratheon admitted to my brother, Esser Tommen Baratheon, and myself, that he did kill his little brother Renly to gain his army. Stannis proclaimed that neither my brothers nor I were worthy of the Iron Throne. Stannis murdered his brother and had his nephew assassinated. He fully intended to kill my brother and I, and likely planned horrific things for my mother and sister, so with a heavy heart, I executed him on the battlefield, but not before formally stripping him of his Baratheon name and formally recognizing no blood ties with Stannis' no name. Naruto said this, the lords and ladies understanding that since he formally declared no blood ties to Stannis, in the eyes of the law, it was not kinslaying, and nobody could accuse him of it. Couple more things left. Earlier, I received a raven from Dragonstone. My men snuck past Stannis' fleet and captured Dragonstone, slaying the Red Priestess that corrupted my once honorable uncle and turned him against his family. Unfortunately, my cousin, the Lady Shireen Baratheon, was burned at the stake by the Red Witch, and Lady Celes Baratheon took her own life when she saw this. For the moment, Dragonstone will be held by the men of the Golden Company until a lord can be appointed to guard the entrance to the Narrow Sea. King Joffrey's funeral will be held tomorrow in the Great Sept of Baelor at midday. 2 days after that, we will have my coronation. I understand, it's not exactly normal to move along that quickly, but these aren't normal times. The kingdoms are at war with one another. Mayhaps when the war is over, we can return to a sense of normalcy, but until then, we must push forward until peace has returned to Westeros. Now, let's get started. And with that, Naruto began handing out awards to the participants of the battle. Certain lords were recognized. Bronn and Black Balok were raised up as Esser Bronn and Esser Balok of the Blackwater, while Tyrion and Tommen were proclaimed the saviors of the city. Tommen was also raised up as the Lord of Storm's End and Lord Paramount of the Stormlands, while the Stormlanders that turned on Stannis affirmed their loyalties to Tommen. Lord Tywin Lannister, Naruto called, and Tywin Lannister stepped forward and knelt before the throne. Another thing was Tywin and the Tyrell army arrived just as the battle had ended. Grandfather, when my brother was still alive, he named you the Hand of King. Now that you are here, I would invite you to officially take up that role. Tyrion had enjoyed his brief few months as acting hand, but as long as Tywin lived, the position was only temporary. Naruto placed the hand's brooch on a pillow held by a servant. The servant stepped down and handed it to Lord Tywin. Tywin took the brooch and pinned it to his surcoat. He gave a deep bow. "Thank you, Your Grace," he said formally before stepping forward and taking his seat at the Naruto's left side. "Huh, they're already calling me that, and Joffrey's barely been dead 2 days, Naruto noted. Naruto then turned his head to Petyr Baelish. Lord Petyr Baelish stepped forward. Littlefinger did as commanded and got down on one knee. Now this was somebody he did not want to honor. Gorys, the Golden Company paymaster, was very good with numbers, and Naruto wasn't too bad himself. It didn't take them more than 1 day to figure out that the royal family was not spending nearly enough every year to bankrupt the realm. Only 2 other men could have been responsible. Jon Arryn would never hurt Robert like that, so that left only Baelish. Another point against Baelish was the crown only started getting in debt after Baelish replaced the previous master of coin in 289 AC. Still, he had no choice. Baelish had helped bring the Tyrells to their side. It did not mean that Naruto planned to let the smirking cunt live long enough to enjoy it. Naruto began again, "For your loyal service to the crown and successfully bringing House Tyrell to the crown's side, I hereby name you Lord of Harrenhal, and bequeath to you all of its lands, holdings and incomes, to be held by your sons and grandsons, for as long as your line shall last." Naruto was a little surprised nobody but Tyrion, Tommen, Tywin, Cersei, and the ominous way he said, "For as long as your line shall last." Littlefinger smiled and stood up. "You honor me beyond words, Your Grace. Now I shall have to acquire some sons and grandsons." This got a chuckle from some, but most, including Lord Varys, just rolled their eyes in annoyance. As Littlefinger returned to his place, Naruto called upon the Tyrells. Esser Garland Tyrell stepped forward. The man in question stepped forward and knelt. "Your house came to aid mine in a time of great need. The crown and the realm are in your debt. If you or your family would ask anything of me, then ask, and I shall do everything in my power to see it done." Esser Garland stood up. Your Grace, we would ask but for one thing. To prove our undying loyalty, we ask that you find it in your heart to do us the honor of uniting our houses by marrying my sister Marjorie. If I recall correctly, Sir Garland, your sister was previously married to my uncle, Renly Baratheon. Tell me, why should I consent to a marriage with a house that, instead of acknowledging my brothers and I as my father's rightful and immediate heirs, attempted to supplant the line of succession by placing the last in line on the throne? Naruto asked, as he decided to mess with them. Favorite Uncle Renly may have been, it didn't change what happened. The Tyrell siblings looked at each other nervously as the court murmured amongst themselves. Garland spoke up. My sister only ever did as our Lord Father commanded. She was made a widow before that marriage was consummated. I assure your Grace, Marjorie remains innocent. Naruto nodded slowly before turning to the beautiful woman. Is this truly what you desire, Lady Marjorie? Marjorie stepped forward and gave Naruto a dazzling smile. With all my heart, your Grace, she spoke. Tales of your bravery, honor, and strength have never been far from my ears. Now those tales have taken root deep inside of me. It took all of Naruto's willpower to keep a straight face, but in the inside, he was excited at the prospect of marrying such a beautiful woman and having her all to himself. A woman, who, if rumors of her political skills were anything to go by, was the perfect match for him. A diplomat and politician to cover the political deficiencies of his warrior king. Naruto returned with his own smile. You do me a great honor, Lady Marjorie. I too have heard tales of your beauty and grace. But it is clear those tales are a lie, for they do not begin to do you the justice you rightly deserve. I would be honored to return your love. Marjorie's smile widened and Naruto decided to mess with them and everyone else some more. There is just one small problem, Naruto said, and Marjorie's smile was lost to genuine confusion. I know my education is not the most complete, given that I was sold into slavery at age 11, but I do remember that one of my last lessons with Grand Maester Pycelle was that if the king was betrothed and died before that marriage could be consummated, then if his immediate male heir was also unmarried or unbetrothed, that heir would take his place in the betrothal. I do believe I have that correct, Grand Maester. Pycelle came forward from the crowd. You are correct, your grace. The sea custom is as you stated. Naruto turned back to the Tyrells and said, so, you see, this presents a bit of an issue. Naruto let the court murmur and let the Tyrells metaphorically sweat a bit before he continued on and shocked the court by saying, but I cannot accept that. The court murmured amongst themselves as he pressed onward. I cannot accept such a precedent because Sansa Stark's heart and hand belong to someone else. Lady Sansa, Lord Tommen, come forward. The Tyrells, Tywin and his two children, Petter and Varys, all seemed to realize what he was doing, and Tywin and Baelish were not happy as they both had plans for Sansa that were about to be scrapped. Brother, Naruto said to Tommen, based on our discussions, I gathered you harbor romantic feelings for Ned Stark's eldest daughter. It is true, brother, Tommen said as he looked at his brother. During the year that I fostered under Lord Eddard Stark, we grew close and I became enamored with Lady Sansa. Yet before I could approach our fathers about a betrothal, she was betrothed to Joffrey. I tried to bury my feelings, but they only grew stronger. And while it pains me that Joffrey is no longer with us, I would hope to follow my heart and marry the woman I love before the machinations of others separate us again. Lady Sansa, Naruto said as he addressed her, my beloved brother has admitted his true feelings for you. Would you consent to marrying him, in spite of my elder brother's unfortunate passing, so as to do as my father always wished and unite the houses of Baratheon and Stark in matrimony? Sansa contemplated for several moments before giving her answer, even though privately, Naruto had spoken with the both of them before the court session. I would, your grace. Though it pains me to know that my beloved King Joffrey was murdered in such a manner, I would fulfill the betrothal our fathers made. A daughter of House Stark for a son of House Baratheon. I would be honored to marry the Lord of Storm's End, your grace. Then it is decided. Naruto said happily. 3 days after my coronation, the two of shall be wed in the Sept of Baelor. Naruto then turned back to the Tyrells. I do believe that frees me up. Sir Garland, now that I have no prior promises to keep, I will gladly marry your sweet sister. She will be my queen and I shall love her from this day until my last day. Upon hearing Naruto's declaration, the court began to clap and cheer loudly. The War of Five Kings was not yet over, but many historians would look back on the Battle of Blackwater Bay and its immediate aftermath, and say that this was the moment that the reign of Joffrey the Ill-Born officially ended, and the reign of the Wildfire King began. Naruto had hated Joffrey for as long as he could remember. Ever since the first time Joffrey did something to hurt his siblings. For Naruto and Tommen, Joffrey was the personification of cruelty, madness, and stupidity. Naruto and Tommen didn't really care that Joffrey was dead. The two brothers had both nearly killed him on separate occasions, and Naruto had killed him. Part of Tommen wanted to thank the man who killed the insane fool. Westeros would be better off without Joffrey sitting in the most powerful seat in the land. Their mother was silent too, but she was sad. It was very evident from her wet cheeks. "Your brother is dead," came the voice of their grandfather. "Do you know what that means?" "It means that unless I abdicate and give the throne to Tommen, I'll be king." Naruto jested with a shrug. "Not funny, brother. You know I don't want to be king," Tommen said to Naruto, and Naruto sighed playfully. "Yes, Tommen. Unfortunately, you have made yourself very clear that you only want to be Lord of Storm's End, so I suppose I have to stay here and rule instead of living our father's dream of being a sellsword king in Essos," Naruto said, though he was only jesting. Tywin didn't seem amused by the joking, so Naruto stopped. "Yes, and what kind of king do you want to be?" Tywin asked once he decided he let Naruto stew in silence long enough. "The one whose life ambition is not to outdo Aerys the Mad at being an insane idiot," Naruto said, though he did kind of regret it when he saw his mother's face. "I meant to say a good king," he corrected himself. "I think you will be. Despite your incomplete education, you seem to have the right temperament for it. But what makes a good king? What is the single most important quality of a good king?" Tywin questioned him. "This is hardly the place or time," interrupted Cersei, but Tywin didn't listen to her. Naruto looked around the darkened sept and began monologuing. "I never thought I would be king. I was a second son. Before it, where Euron captured me, all I wanted to do was be Lord of Storm's End, marry a pretty girl, have a lot of kids and maybe a few bastards. Then when I became the leader of the Golden Company, I figured I would live out father's dream of being a sellsword, and I did for a while. All the gold, women, wine, and battle that I could want. And it was pretty great too." Naruto began walking around in a circle around Joffrey's corpse. "There have been a lot of kings in Westeros. Some great ones, lot of good ones, lot of bad ones, and some really terrible ones. There are a lot of qualities that a good king needs: strength, justice, a certain respect for religion. But not too much of each one. Baelor the Blessed was pious. He built this very sept. He also named a young boy as the High Septon because he thought he could work miracles and tried to replace all the ravens in Westeros with doves, both of which were colossal failures. He then fasted himself to death when his sister Dana the Defiant fell pregnant with demon Blackfire." Naruto stopped at the statue of the father and looked at Tywin. "So, not piety. Justice is important for a king to have. Baelor Breakspear, son of Darren II, was a just man. At the tourney at Ashford Meadow in 209 AC, he rushed to the defense of future Lord Commander of the Kingsguard Esser Duncan the Tall when he defended an innocent woman from Aryan Brightflame, who was attacking her. He wasn't necessarily wrong to do so. Duncan was only guilty of defending an innocent woman against a Targaryen prince who would have given Aerys a run for his money. Baelor took part in the trial by 7 that Aryan demanded and fought for Duncan. Duncan's defending party won the trial, but Baelor had received a mortal blow to his head from his brother, Prince Maekar, and died in Dunk's arms. So, not justice. Strength is another quality that is needed. My father, King Robert, was strong. He won the rebellion, crushed the Targaryen dynasty, and claimed the Iron Throne by right of conquest. And a decade later, he crushed the Greyjoys when they tried to rebel. Yet, without a war to fight, I'm told he ultimately wasted away until he became a shadow of his former self, eating, drinking and hunting, until the last two sent him to an early grave. Any decent king needs strength not just of body, but of will as well. Aenys I had no strength of will to speak of. He was weak, indecisive, and delusional, unable to understand the complexities of governing a young dynasty. Things got so bad under this weakling of a king, that just 5 years into his reign, he was nearly overthrown by the faith militant. His brother Maegor had the strength of their father, Aegon the Conqueror, and was a great warrior. With his strength of will, He waged a war that ultimately crushed the Faith militant and saved the Targaryen dynasty. But he was too heavy-handed in his approach. His cruelty eventually got so bad that the kingdoms abandoned him, and either someone assassinated him or he took his own life. Naruto stopped at the statue of the crone and continued, "Of all the kings of Westeros, there are two that had the longest reigns. The longest was Garth the Golden-Hand Gardener, one of the Gardener kings who ruled the Reach before Aegon came to Westeros. He became king of the Reach at 12 and had reigned for 81 years when he died. During the long years of his reign, the Reach was at war for less than 10 of them. Generations of boys were born, grew to manhood, and sired children of their own and died without ever having to know what it was to grasp a spear and shield and march away to war. And with this long peace came an unprecedented prosperity for his kingdom. Jaehaerys I Targaryen was much the same. He became king of Westeros after Maegor died. He made sure the Faith militant never reformed, established many laws, and made Westeros into the kingdom we know today. He was the longest reigning Targaryen monarch, sitting on the throne for 55 years. Like the Golden Hand, any wars fought in his reign were short and resolved quickly. His reign is remembered as the most prosperous period in the history of the Targaryen monarchy. His rule brought peace, stability, and justice to the Seven Kingdoms. According to the Archmaesters, the population of Westeros north of Dorne doubled during Jaehaerys' reign, with the population of King's Landing becoming 4 times as large. Many young lords admire Aegon the Conqueror or Daeron the Young. Really, they should aspire to be more like the Golden Hand and the Old King. Those two men are my personal heroes, and they were able to do what they did and accomplish their great feats, because they were wiser than all their peers. Naruto turned around to face Tywin. Wisdom is the most important quality of any king. Yes. A good king must be wise. Tywin acknowledged, while privately being a bit impressed with how his grandson had thought that answer through. But what is wisdom? A house with fertile lands wants help against a house with a great navy that could one day oppose you. What do you do? Any experience in granaries, treasuries, shipyards or armies? Not of the first and third. Didn't need to know them while running the Golden Company. He replied, knowing he had a lot of making up to do. Of course not. A wise king knows what he knows and what he doesn't. That's why a wise king listens to the advice of his counselors until he comes of age, but the wisest kings, like the two you mentioned, continue to listen to them long afterward. Naruto could tell that his grandfather was trying to manipulate him, but Naruto also knew that right now, he needed his grandfather. He was a very learned, intelligent, and clever man, and he had basically ran the kingdoms for Aerys during his long tenure as Hand of the King. Of course, that could change depending on how much Tywin argued and fought with Naruto on his policies, and when the Dornish come into play. Your brother was not a wise king. Your brother was not a good king, Tywin said, seeing no harm in saying it as it was true. If he had been, perhaps he'd still be alive. Now, as the king, you will have to marry. Thankfully, you are well on your way to taking care of that with Lady Marjorie, but do you understand why? A king needs a wife to give him heirs to inherit his throne and maybe daughters to help make strategic alliances. For a king of Westeros, the most preferable choice is one from a powerful house with a strong military or economic advantage, like one of the Lord Paramounts, to help secure his family's hold over his kingdom. The Tyrells are the most suitable choice due to the Reach's fertile lands and the Reach having the largest military, 100,000 troops in total, I believe, answered Naruto. That is correct, said grandfather while leading him towards the exit, leaving Cersei and Tommen alone. Do you know how one makes an heir? Tywin felt the need to ask because he knew next to nothing about this version of his grandson, and was trying to reconcile the brave young boy he had read reports about with the man standing next to him. I can imagine, Tywin chuckled as the two walked further away and out the sept. Nighttime, his bedroom, he heard footsteps and he woke up immediately. He pulled out the long dagger he kept under his pillow. Who's there? He asked loudly, not for the attacker but for Esser Balin outside. Slowly the figure emerged from the shadows and it showed Marjorie Tyrell. Naruto sighed as he realized he was in no danger, so he resheathed his dagger while he addressed his wife to be, "You shouldn't sneak into my room unannounced like that. I thought you were an intruder." "I apologize for that, Your Grace, but I wanted to see you," Marjorie said sweetly. "How did you get past the Kingsguard?" Naruto asked, as Esser Balin should still be standing guard. "Esser Balin is a devoted knight, Your Grace, But one man can only do so much. Filling them soon. Marjorie playfully said. I was not taking any visitors right now. I thought that was clear, considering I was sleeping. Naruto mentioned as he sat up. I'm not a visitor, Your Grace. After all, I'm to be your bride, Marjorie said as she lit the candles, making her appear mesmerizing in the moonlight. I am aware. I did accept the betrothal in front of the court, after all, Naruto said with a small smile. Did you know that people in arranged marriages often never meet until their wedding day? Marjorie asked rhetorically as she sat on his bed. Before we decide to spend our lives together, we ought to get to know one another, don't you think? That seems fair. We should also be honest with each other, no? Naruto said as he matched her playful smirk. Of course, Your Grace. She agreed. Then tell me, why are you really here? It's not to seduce me, is it? There's no real need for that. We are going to be married within the year anyway, Naruto said. No, I came here because I wanted to get to know you better. Have I given you a reason to not to trust me? Marjorie asked, as she actually seemed a bit hurt by that accusation. No, I'm sorry. I'm being rude. It's been difficult, adjusting to being back home. And then there is all the other stuff, like Renly being killed by Stannis, me executing Stannis, and then becoming king. It's a lot to process all at once. Naruto admitted lamely as he sighed. He was trying to figure this woman out, but he wasn't trying to be rude about it. I'm sorry, Your Grace. I can't begin to imagine how difficult it must be for you, Marjorie said with sympathy, though he could not tell if it was real or not. It's just, in Essos, everyone was an enemy. At least a potential one. Today's benefactor could be our target tomorrow, we used to say in the company. I always had to figure people out. I also never learned how to court a girl. I was sold into slavery before I could learn. I apologize if I seem terrible at this. I am working on that, Naruto admitted. It's all right, Your Grace. I think I understand, Marjorie said as she looked at the door. It's getting late, I should go. May I come and visit you again? I'd like that, Naruto admitted with a genuine smile. All right then, she said, smiling wider, knowing that she did her job of starting to bond with her husband, and began to leave. Marjorie, Naruto called out to her, and she turned back around. Yes, she asked. When we are alone, call me Naruto, he said with a light smile. Thank you, Naruto, Marjorie said with what appeared to be a genuine smile as she left the room. That woman is good. The whole time, I couldn't tell if she was being genuine or not. At least this marriage will be interesting, Naruto thought as he went back to sleep. Naruto's coronation. May the warrior grant him courage and protect him in these perilous times. May the smith grant him strength that he might bear this heavy burden. And may the crone, she that knows the fate of all men, show him the path he must walk and guide him through the dark places that lie ahead. In the light of the seven, I now proclaim Naruto of the House Baratheon, first of his name, King of the Andals the Roiner, and the first men and Lord of the Seven Kingdoms. Long may he reign, announced the High Septon as he placed the crown on his head. Naruto's crown was a Valyrian steel circlet that was set with large square-cut golden topazes. A stag head rested on the circlet, with golden topazes in its eyes. This actually was Aegon the Conqueror's old crown. Somehow between the time when Darren the young dragon lost the crown in Dorne and when Naruto destroyed Myr, it had ended up in Myr, and he had found it when he destroyed the city for Lee. He had the thing reforged to be more Baratheon. Naruto had also taken down all of Joffrey's banners. Naruto had always despised Joffrey's banner. It was an insult to House Baratheon. Bad enough that he made the lion and stag equal, but then Joffrey took the insult a step further by having the lion's tail cross into the stag's half of the banner. It was ridiculous, because it implied that the lion was superior to the stag. Which was not true. Robert won 3 battles in a single day. Robert won the war when he killed Rhaegar. Robert crushed the Ironborn. All Tywin did was attack a city that couldn't actually defend itself from him and let his fleet get sunk. So, Naruto had Joffrey's banners all taken down and burned. And he had his own personal sigil put up. A golden stag on a black field, with the stag surrounded by a green flame. This banner was the most present. He put up a few banners of House Baratheon, House Lannister, and House Tyrell to show his ties to each house, but his banner was the most numerous. Long may he reign, shouted the crowd. Throughout the entire ceremony, Naruto greeted various lords and ladies, but the ones he enjoyed the most were his family and Marjorie, but his mom blocked his view and went over to Marjorie and acted like a bitch. He would make her pay for that later. He may want a relationship with his mother, but he would tolerate no threats to his future wife. The next day, small council chambers. Naruto waited patiently in the small council chambers inside the Red Keep, not the one in the Tower of the Hand. Taiwan had tried to have the small council in the chambers in the Tower of the Hand, but Naruto made it in no way uncertain that while he was in the city, any small council meeting would be held in its proper setting. It was finally that Taiwan, Bellish, Varus, Pycelle, Tyrion, Tommen, and Cersei for some reason, arrived in the chambers. "You're late," Naruto said in amusement as he sat himself at the head of the table. "Take your seats. I'm told we have much to discuss." Taiwan moved first, taking his seat at Naruto's right side. Tommen sat at Naruto's left. Pycelle, Varus, and Bellish all took their seats, while Tyrion made a show of taking the seat at the end. Cersei then tried to take a seat, but Naruto interjected, saying, "What are you doing?" "I'm taking my seat," Cersei stated, to which Naruto snorted. "I can see that. Why are you taking a seat? I gave you no permission to sit on this council," Naruto stated. "I have counsel to offer you," Cersei argued. "Like what? You couldn't even manage this one city, let alone 7 kingdoms. You let my idiot brother execute Ned Stark, and now the North and the Riverlands are rebelling to gain their independence. Tyrion had to come and basically save you, and even then, you fought him at every turn, and things got so bad that the people rioted after Marcella was sent to Dorne. Your past actions have shown that you can't govern, and I won't have you on this council, or in any position of power, for that matter. I am Queen Regent." Naruto shut her up as he slammed his hand on the table as he stood up and silenced her with a glare. "Let me explain how this works, Mother. You were queen only because you married my father. The moment Joffrey became king, you stopped being the queen. You are not queen, because you are not married to the king. And as for being regent, a king only needs a regent when he is under the age of 16. I'm nearly 20 years old. Joffrey may have been stupid enough to not realize that, but I am not. If there is non-sensitive information that Lord Tywin or Uncle Tyrion wish to share with you, they may do so, but you will not sit on this council or hold any position of power. Now, leave," Naruto ordered, and Cersei, not willing to push her luck, turned around and stomped out, while hiding the tears running down her cheek at her son's harsh yet true words. Naruto sighed and sat back down. "My apologies about that unpleasant business, my lords." "Don't apologize, nephew. That was very entertaining to watch," Tyrion said enthusiastically. "You made the right choice, Your Grace," Tywin acknowledged. "Cersei. Not because she was a woman, as she always claimed, but because she is not as smart as she thinks she is. Her record speaks for itself," Naruto acknowledged. "Now, let's get this meeting started." Tywin started off by asking, "What news of Jaime?" Bellish, Varys, and Pycelle looked at each other but had nothing to say. 20,000 unwashed northerners have known about his escape for weeks. Collectively, you 3 control most of the spies in Westeros. You mean to tell me that none of you have an inkling of where he might be? "We are doing everything we can to find him, my lord hand," Varys said. "Do more," Tywin ordered, and Varys nodded. "What do we have then?" "Robb Stark has returned from the Westerlands and taken his army back to Riverrun for the funeral of his grandfather, Lord Hoster Tully. Roose Bolton has killed the brave companions and now holds Harrenhal in Robb Stark's name. Which would seem to make him Lord of Harrenhal in practice, if not in name," Varys said as he teased Bellish. "Well, let him have it," Tywin said, and Naruto was glad he had some guards outside. This was the perfect pretext to get rid of Bellish. The name suits our purposes far more than that useless pile of rubble. The Lord of Harrenhal will make a worthy suitor for the widow Arryn. "For which I am extremely grateful to you, my lord, Your Grace," Bellish said in false gratitude as he acknowledged both Naruto and Tywin. "Lady Arryn and I have known each other since we were children. She has always been positively predisposed toward me. A successful courtship would make Lord Bellish acting Lord of the Vale," Pycelle said. "Titles do seem to breed titles," Bellish said. "You'll leave for the Eyrie as soon as possible and bring Lisa Arryn into the fold. Then the young wolf can add his own aunt to the list of people who have taken up arms against him." Tywin said, and Naruto saw that now was the best chance. No, he will not, Naruto said as the counselors looked at him. No? Asked Petter with his smile leaving him. You will not be leaving King's Landing again, Lord Bellish, commanded Naruto coldly. Not to question you, Your Grace, but why? Bellish asked as he tried to figure out how to get around this. Perhaps with a whore or two would suffice. It worked for Robert, like father like son. Why would I trust the man who betrayed Lord Stark and the last hand of the king, which started this damn war in the first place? It doesn't set a good precedent, asked Naruto with an annoyed tone in his voice. Lord Stark was a fool. An honorable one, but a fool nonetheless. I never side with fools, Your Grace. Surely a man of your expertise would understand siding with fools is not wise, offered Petter. Ned Stark was hardly a fool. I don't particularly care what he was or wasn't guilty of. The fact remains, had you backed him, a peaceful transition could have ensued, like my father wanted. Instead, I have 2 wars for independence being waged against us, and both of my uncles are dead, and I'm not entirely sure that isn't what you wanted, said Naruto angrily while glaring at Petter Bellish, who looked a tad nervous since this was not going the way he wanted. All the others present felt no need to interfere. In my defense, Your Grace, said Bellish, but was stopped when Naruto raised his hand and shot him a glare. There is no defense for what you did, Lord Bellish. Not only did you betray Ned Stark, you betrayed the final command of my father. In addition, there's this, said Naruto as he pulled out the book of all the financial transactions of the crown. The Golden Company's paymaster and I already went through this. The details are dreary, but the basic gist of it all is that Bellish here has been stealing and embezzling money from the crown since he became master of coin. More than 6 million gold dragons. He showed Tywin, Varys, and Tyrion while men of the Golden Company came in, blocking each exit. Bellish was sweating as he was trapped with nowhere to go, and the new king had figured him out. How? Only he, Petter Bellish, was supposed to be good with numbers. As Naruto explained further, including things like how the crown's spending never really increased and Robert's excesses, as well as his mother's spending and the family's never really changed from the time when Wyman Manderley was master of coin, and then suddenly Bellish comes in and the crown starts losing money. Varys already knew Bellish had been stealing money, but he had never had a way to prove it. High-level math was not really his thing, and he would not have been able to explain it to prove it. Tywin, meanwhile, as Naruto's explanation connected the dots for him, was kicking himself mentally. How could he have not noticed this duplicity? He knew Bellish was scum and not trustworthy, but to be so brazen as to steal and embezzle money from the crown, and therefore, from Tywin. He was more angry that he had awarded the little rat. And had his grandson not brought it up, he would have sent Bellish into the most unassailable kingdom after the north. Take him down to the torture chambers. I want to know where all the crown's money is. Tell them they have my permission to go all out. Naruto told his men. Naruto sat down after his men dragged the kicking and screaming Bellish away. He looked to Tywin, noticed his look and said, "You disapprove?" Naruto could see Bellish for what he was. Bellish ingratiated himself with everybody. He's everybody's friend. But he is also willing to throw those friends under the wheel carriage when they no longer serve his interests. Someone like Bellish was meant to be used, and then disposed of. Keeping him around was stupid, and definitely going to bite Naruto in the ass if he did. Naruto wanted a peaceful realm to rule over after he was done with the Ironborn and Robb Stark. Bellish sabotaged peace the last time around. Naruto was not going to risk his efforts being poisoned. Only that we have no one to bring the veil into the fold now. I am pleased that the man who thought he could steal from the lion and get away with it has been caught and will soon be executed, but that still leaves the veil, Tywin said. We'll leave the veil alone for now. Lisa wouldn't leave the veil for her sister and nephew. She likely won't leave it as long as news of what has befallen her childhood lover never reaches her. Naruto said. Once he tells us where all that stolen money is, he dies. Far be it from me to hinder justice, but Lord Bellish's absence would present certain problems. The royal wedding may end up being the most expensive event in living memory. Summer has ended. Winter is a few years away. Not a good time to leave the crown's finances unattended, Tyrion said. Naruto whispered something quickly to Tywin and they exchanged a few whispers and a nod from Naruto before Tywin addressed his youngest son. Fully agreed. Which is why His Grace and I have agreed to name you the new Master of Coin, Tywin said. Master of Coin? Tyrion asked. It would appear to be a position that best suits your talents, Tywin said. I'm quite good at spending money, but a lifetime of outrageous wealth hasn't taught me much about managing it, Tyrion said. Besides, Master of Coin is a demotion for a man who was once Hand of the King. You handled this unstable city well enough when Joffrey was doing everything to cause a riot in the streets. I am certain you will do fine with a stable treasury, Tyrion, Naruto said. Here, Pycelle said. One last thing, I sent terms for peace to Robb Stark yesterday. I am awaiting his response, Naruto said, causing his advisors to look at him. What were the terms? Tyrion wondered. Nothing much. Just that he and I agree to a time and place to meet and discuss his surrender. In exchange for a peaceful surrender and swearing oaths of fealty to the royal house of Baratheon, he must give up his crowlame on the Riverlands. In exchange, he will take up his father's old position as Warden of the North. If he does so peacefully, the North will not have to pay reparations for damages committed during the war. His family's ancestral sword ice and Ned Stark's corpse will be given back, and all effort will be made to finding Arya. However, as Sansa is marrying my brother and will be Lady of Storm's End, she will not be returned. He also has to give up his mother for kidnapping Tyrion Lannister. She must be put on trial for her crimes. If he refuses, he will be humbled, laid low, and his army will be crushed by Tywin Lannister. You're going to let him off for free, Tywin said, containing his anger that the Starks would not have to pay reparations for the acts and pillaging they committed in the Westerlands. I was lying, of course. No disrespect meant, grandfather, but Robb Stark is a far better general than you and has already crushed your forces 7 times. I will be facing him if he doesn't submit, right after I am done wiping out the Ironborn. I also did not mention our 210,000-strong army. He would have known he had no chance if he was facing those numbers. I fully expect him to refuse, which we can use by saying we tried to end this war peacefully and anything that happens afterwards is because he did not want to come to the table, Naruto said, revealing his devious military mind. Tywin grit his teeth at the jab about how easily Robb Stark was beating him. You shouldn't face him yourself, nephew. If you die without an heir, Tommen will have no choice but to be king, Tyrion said. I didn't get to be leader of the Golden Company by leading from the back or hiding 1,000 miles away. I will face him and that is the end of it, Naruto said as he stood up. I believe that is all for today, my lords. With that, the meeting drew to a close. Flea-bottom Naruto walked through the streets of King's Landing again, getting a better feel for the city. One of the things he intended to get started before he left was fixing the infrastructure of King's Landing. As Naruto and Esser Balin walked through the streets, they came upon Tyrell guards and saw Marjorie and her handmaidens enter one of the various orphanages. Wonder what she's doing, Naruto wondered. I don't know, Your Grace, Esser Balin said. Naruto walked into the orphanage with Esser Balin behind him. He was a soldier, a young girl said to Marjorie, talking about her father. He went to fight on the walls when the ships came into Blackwater Bay. He never came back. And your mother? Marjorie asks. She died when she had me, the poor girl said. Bad men wanted to come into this city and do terrible things, but your father stopped them, Marjorie said as Naruto leaned in the doorway and Esser Balin was behind him, as his wife-to-be handed the kid a toy knight. Whenever you look at this knight, I want you to remember your father. He wasn't a knight, he was just a soldier, the girl said. And what do knights swear to do? Naruto said as he walked in, to the shock and awe of the orphans. Protect the weak and defend all that is good. Your father did that. Naruto sat down next to the girl. Be proud of him. The girl smiled. Your Grace, Marjorie and her handmaidens gave a light courtesy. My lady, Naruto returned it by kissing her hand. Was your father a soldier, too? Naruto asked a boy nearby and he nodded. You should be proud, too. That made the boy smile, doubly so because he was the king. Under King Naruto's leadership, your fathers helped save the city. They saved us all, Marjorie said to the kids as her handmaidens began handing out food. From now on, we're going to take care of you, all of you. A few minutes later, the children were out playing in the streets, their bellies fuller, as Marjorie was escorted out by several children that were holding her hands. Naruto was led out by 2 young children himself. Come to me for whatever you need to feed them, clothe them, or house them. Marjorie said to the matron before she added, directly to me. Later that night Naruto and Cersei walked into a late-night dinner with Loras and Marjorie. Naruto had just come from a meeting with Lord Rowan, Lord Tarley, and his officers of the Golden Company. The plans for how to deal with Robb Stark had been made. Now, they waited for the response. Please, sit, Naruto insists as he walked in. I do apologize, my lady, Sir Loras. Late-night War Council meeting. Until Robb Stark and the Ironborn are dealt with, that's going to be a regular occurrence. Yet at some point, it should become treasonous to prevent the king from attending other important matters, like dinner with his bride. Marjorie laughs a bit at Naruto's bad attempt at a joke. They all took their seats. Naruto at one end, Marjorie by his side and his mother on the end. Loras is beside his sister and Cersei. Cersei glares at the Tyrells. Marjorie watches her, a slight smirk curling her lips. That's a lovely gown, my lady. Naruto complimented, trying not to be super obvious that he is totally checking her out. Yes, it suits you perfectly, Cersei insults, calling her a whore without actually saying it, making Naruto annoyed. But I imagine you might be rather cold. She sips her wine. The climate is a bit more forgiving back in Highgarden, Your Grace. Marjorie said, but really she was fine, and pleased that Naruto liked how she looked in the dress. It was a welcome change from Renly, who wasn't interested in her at all. Would you like me to have a shawl brought for you, my lady? Naruto asks. Marjorie takes his hand in hers. I am touched by your concern, Your Grace. Luckily for us Tyrells our blood runs quite warm, doesn't it, Loras? He nods. Loras, isn't the Queen's gown magnificent? Marjorie says, attempting to make some conversation with his betrothed's mother. The fabric, the embroidery, the metalwork. I've never seen anything like it. You might find a bit of armor quite useful once you become queen, Cersei replies, looking at Marjorie. Naruto tells me you stopped at Fleabottom on your way back from the Sept this morning. She sips her wine. Yes. Marjorie looks at the king, who is annoyed at his mother's breach of confidence. I paid a visit to an orphanage the High Septon told me about, and his grace just happened to be passing by. Marjorie does a great deal of work with the poor back in Highgarden, Loras tells Cersei. She smiles. The lowest among us are no different from the highest if you give them a chance and approach them with an open heart, Lady Tyrell preaches to the table. Naruto honestly agreed with that sentiment. He had lived as a slave for a time. He knew that when it came down to it, people were pretty much the same, with some exceptions. Marjorie does seem to be genuine about helping the people, which worked for him. Lady Marjorie, Cersei says, I must warn of your travels in this city. An open heart is what you'll get in Fleabottom if you're not careful, my dear. Not long ago, we were attacked by a mob there. We had a full complement of guards. They didn't stop them. King Joffrey barely escaped with his life. Her eyes held sadness, thinking of her eldest child. You were attacked in the streets because Joffrey started a war by killing Ned Stark, Naruto said, making his mother freeze as she was bringing the wine to her lips. And because he couldn't keep his mouth shut when someone threw a cow pie at him and tried to have them all killed. Marjorie and Loras glance at one another. The room is quiet but for Naruto cutting his food. Hunger turns men into beasts, Marjorie notes. I'm glad House Tyrell has been able to help in this regard. They tell me 100 wagons arrive daily from the Reach. Wheat, barley, apples. We've had a blessed harvest and of course it's our duty to assist the capital in times of need. Lady Marjorie is known for doing charitable work with the poor. I'm sure she knows what she's doing. Marjorie blushes. I'm sure she does, Cersei sighs, just letting it rest. There was no point in arguing with her son more than she had already. Naruto room later you didn't tell me you did charity work, Marjorie. Naruto teased as he lay in bed with Marjorie sitting on his bed. Well, there is a lot about me that you still don't know, Naruto. Marjorie teased. I can see that. Naruto said with a smile. Still, it makes me happy in a way. We'll have all the time in the world to learn about each other once the war is done. Marjorie smiled at him. So, I heard there isn't to be too much spending on your brother's wedding. You are saving money for winter? Marjorie asked. Something like that. They say summer is over, so in a few years, winter will be here. Plus Tommen said they don't want too big of a wedding anyway. Naruto chuckled. I am not exactly one for parties, given my time as a slave and then as a member of the Golden Company. Now though, I don't have a choice, do I? I'm afraid not. It is expected of you, though, you will need someone who will be at those parties for you. Marjorie scooted closer to him. Someone you can trust. Naruto smirked at her. Yes, someone with great social and political skills. I'm guessing you did a lot of that in Highgarden? Grandmother was more or less throwing me at people so I could talk to them. Marjorie smiled wryly. I was terrible at first, but I slowly learned how to talk and smile, even though I didn't feel like it. Yeah. First you learn how to lie. Naruto remembered his own experiences learning politics and talking as a kid. After a while, you don't care whether the person in front of you is lying or telling the truth. And you just keep smiling. They both said at the same time and they looked at each other and laughed. Perhaps we have more things in common than we knew. Marjorie winked at him. Perhaps we do. Naruto noted. So tell me, behind all politics, what do you enjoy? Marjorie smiled and decided to use her trump card. I love children. Really? Naruto asked her. Back in Highgarden, it is rather imperative that the city is kept clean. And because there were so many orphans in the streets, I helped open orphanages so that they could live there instead of in the streets. Naruto looked rather bemused. I wasn't aware that you had such pursuits. My father tried to keep a lid on it. Marjorie explained. He said it was not ladylike to help those poor children. But I did the best I could by having people build orphanages and had sent leftover food from parties at Highgarden. Naruto sat up in wonderment. So, earlier today, that was genuine. Yes, Naruto. It is not their fault that they were born poor. So they just need a little help so that they don't become like the beggars, do you not think so? Marjorie giggled and Naruto smiled. I think so. Naruto said. It's getting late again. I will see you tomorrow night. Marjorie asked and Naruto nodded. He watched Marjorie walk out the door and he looked at the ceiling before he walked over to his desk and pulled out a piece of parchment. He thought to himself before he decided to dip his quill in some ink before he began drawing up plans to fix the infrastructure of King's Landing. Godswood Naruto was in the Godswood, sitting on a stone seat, Dragonslayer resting on his lap as he cleaned the blood off. Some of Stannis's blood was still on it. He had cleaned off most of it when Balin Swan called out to him. Lady Marjorie Tyrell, Your Grace, Balin Swan called out. Let her through, Naruto commanded as he continued to wipe the dried blood off of his father's old warhammer. Marjorie stepped in wearing a new gown that was no less revealing than the one she had worn when they first met. Naruto's eyes leered for a moment. I wonder if there is any dress she doesn't look beautiful in, he thought. Marjorie flashed her glowing smile and curtsied deeply before him. You wished to see me, Naruto? She asked. Naruto nodded. After Tomon's wedding is over, I will be headed back to the war. I just wanted to make sure you have everything and anything you need before I left. Marjorie's smile widened. That is very thoughtful, Naruto. I have everything I could want here. Naruto returned the smile. That's good to hear. How are you liking the capital? Marjorie nodded. It's amazing, Naruto. I've never laid eyes on anything so magnificent. Naruto chuckled, knowing that was kind of a lie, and looked at her. Come now. I thought we agreed to be honest with each other. Tell me what you really think. Marjorie was quickly learning that while Naruto could lie his ass off in public with the best of them, he liked to keep a few people that he could be open and honest with in private. He wanted to at least have some level of trust with his wife to be. All right then, she thought. The smell is a little off-putting and does take away from the charm of the capital. I could smell it from 5 miles away, Marjorie said honestly. Yeah, I have a little project I'm gonna give to the small council when I get back to see if we can't fix that, Naruto said. I'm guessing Highgarden is better than this. Well, it doesn't smell, so there's that, Marjorie said dryly, and Naruto chuckled a bit. I'd like to visit sometime when the war's over. Do they have a Godswood? Naruto asked. It does. Our Godswood has 3 heart trees. We call it the 3 singers because over time, they became so entangled that they look like one tree. Marjorie said. Do you worship the old gods? I do. I converted after my little accident with Wildfire. It also helped that after I converted to the old gods, my back started healing. Kinda gave me more incentive to stay with them, Naruto said. That warhammer. It was your father's, wasn't it? She asked as she sat next to him. It was. Same one he used to kill Rhaegar Targaryen, and the one that I used to kill his brother. Naruto said solemnly, I know Stannis didn't give me a choice. But I just can't help but wonder what would have happened if Renly had triumphed over Stannis. Renly talked about you sometimes. Marjorie said, causing Naruto to look at her. He talked about how close you two were. How he would buy you gifts every month and how he introduced you to your family's traditions. Part of the reason he rebelled when your father died was because he blamed your mother for your presumed death and wanted to avenge you. He lamented how he was never able to tell you that he was happy to be like a big brother to you. Naruto felt relieved and happy that Renly had still cared about him even though he tried to usurp Tommen. Naruto reached in and kissed Marjorie deeply for that. Thank you for telling me that, Marjorie. It's my pleasure, Naruto. Marjorie whispered in his ear as they kissed again under shade of the godswood. Your Grace, Esser Balan's voice came and Naruto pulled away from Marjorie, annoyed that their session was interrupted to see a member of the Golden Company standing next to Balan. A messenger from one of the Golden Company guards. Naruto got up and walked over to the member of the company, who whispered to Naruto really quick and Naruto looked at him and gave an order that Marjorie could not hear. Naruto then walked back to Marjorie. Sorry Marjorie, but duty calls. I have some kingly business to attend to. It's fine Naruto. I understand. You have your duties, Marjorie said in an understanding way. I'll make it up to you. I'll show you the Sept of Baelor later. Naruto promised as he kissed her one last time before picking up his father's warhammer and leaving with Esser Balan and the Golden Company guard. A few minutes later what did you get out of him? Naruto asked. His inti was one of many that belonged to the Golden Company. This one, the leader of the interrogators, was named Roger. He gave up the location of the gold within a few minutes, Captain General. He talked a good game, but once I skinned his left arm, he was squealing like a pig. I've known pirates and smugglers who lasted longer. Roger commented. Roger handed Naruto a piece of parchment. It was written information of everything Bellish confessed to. Naruto pocketed the note and pulled out his Valryan steel katana, which he called Bright Flame. The blade itself had a wildfire green color to it. Part of the reforging process in Kohor when he had it made, he also had the color of the blade change. Well, Bellish, I guess I have no reason to keep you alive. Strap him to the device. Two interrogators of the Golden Company removed Bellish from his binds and strapped him to a St. Andrew's cross. Your Grace, you don't have to do this. I will take the black. Bellish pleaded as a trail of wildfire liquid led from his legs to a metal block on the floor. And let you escape to Essos, or into the arms of Lisa Tully? I don't think so. Say goodbye, scum. Your son and baby mama will join you soon enough. Naruto said as he scraped the metal block with Bright Flame, creating sparks which caused the wildfire trail to ignite and the flames trailed up to the Bellish's legs and crotch, burning him. You want me to make it stop? Naruto asked rhetorically as he stepped closer to the burning man. By the gods, please end it, screamed Bellish. This was not how it was supposed to end. He was supposed to become king and Caitlyn was to be his queen. And now, he had been had, and everything he had built was ripped out from under him. His ladder had broken at the base and now he was falling into an inferno. He never believed that his backstabbing ways might have actually come back to haunt him because he had always been smarter and more patient than anyone else. His ability to be everyone's friend and make himself indispensable to others always allowed him to get away with it. But Bellish dared to open his eyes, and in that bottomless sea of agony, he saw not just Naruto but saw the silhouette of Brandon Stark, the man he hated the most in this world, overlying Naruto's own. Tell it to someone who gives a damn, Naruto said as he slashed Bright Flame upward, cutting Bellish from navel to collarbone, reopening his old wound, causing his blood to spill out. Naruto flicked the blood of his sword and slowly resheathed it. The moment the O-Katana clicked back into its sheath, the wildfire erupted and consumed both Bellish and the St. Andrew's cross, lighting the black cell in a ghastly green light and drowning out the screams of the former master player of the Game of Thrones, and soon all that could be heard was the sound of burning flesh, wood, and melting metal. When he stops burning, feed whatever remains to the dogs in the kennels, Naruto ordered as his men bowed to him as he walked out of the black cell with Esser Balan. Noon Naruto walked into the hand of the king office to speak with Tywin. Naruto stopped in front of Tywin's desk and Tywin seemed to be more interested in a letter he was writing. A lesson that Tywin had learnt from his uncle Jason. Never stop working the moment someone arrives unless truly necessary. A Lannister is to grant the privilege of audience to whoever comes to him when it suits the Lannister, not when the visitor demands. Not to mention it firmly establishes who is in control of the conversation. Naruto was not gonna have it. He was not his father, who was too tired to fight and argue in his last few years of life, nor was he Aerys, a paranoid man afraid of Tywin's shadow, nor was he Joffrey, who was just a coward. He was the Captain General of the Golden Company, the most accomplished military man in Westeros and maybe the entire world. And he would not be ignored. With lightning-quick reflexes honed from nearly a decade of constant warfare, Naruto pulled out a dagger and stabbed the letter where Tywin was writing, nearly stabbing his grandfather's hand and actually startling the old lion, as he had not been expecting such a violent response. I would only come to you if I think it's important. My time is just as valuable as yours, Tywin. The next time you ignore me and waste my time, the knife goes in your hand. Naruto told as he pulled the dagger out and the letter along with it. Now, what was so important that you thought it was a good idea to ignore me? He read the coded letter, figuring out its meaning rather quickly. The two then stared each other down. In this very room, were the two most dominant men in Westeros, maybe the whole planet. Tywin Lannister had earned his reputation and ego. Tywin had distinguished himself in the War of the Ninepenny Kings. He rebuilt House Lannister's reputation and respect from the gutter his father dumped it in, crushing the Rain and Tarbex in their rebellion, wiping them out. He ruled as Hand of the King for 20 years and gave the Seven Kingdoms peace and prosperity. Under Aerys, Tywin was king in all but name. He was responsible for nearly wiping out the Targaryen dynasty. Naruto was the overall commander of the Golden Company and had been for 4 years. He took the former 10,000-strong company and vastly expanded their numbers, turning them into the largest, richest, and greatest private army on the planet. Under his leadership, the company destroyed Tyrosh and Myr, destroying both cities, and claiming millions of pieces of gold as well as other treasures as spoils, while Lee claimed dominion over the disputed lands. He crushed Dothraki hordes numbering between 20,000 and 30,000, a feat only replicated by the Unsullied. He destroyed New Gis and wiped out that particular pillar of Giscari culture. Both of their reputations were earned and both were now clashing each other, because both were too used to running their own show. Naruto read the letter and looked at Tywin. Do I need to explain to you why I need to be the one to defeat Robb Stark? No, you don't need to explain it to me, Tywin said. Well, I can't exactly defeat him if the Freys and Boltons betray Robb Stark at his uncle's wedding, now can I? Naruto asked rhetorically. Explain to me why it is more noble to kill 10,000 men in battle than to kill 10 men at dinner. Tywin asked him right back. It's not about nobility, it's about securing my reign and my dynasty for my children. Naruto said. The Baratheon dynasty is still young, Tywin, and unlike my Targaryen ancestor Maegor, I don't have a horde of dragons to keep Westeros in line. So, I must show them that rebellion will not be tolerated, that the crown's demands will not be ignored. I must put both rebellions down to secure my line. To show them all that royal authority is not to be questioned and that I am the king. Any man who must say I am the king is no true king. I'll make sure you understand that when I've won the war for you, Tywin said irritably. Win the war? Naruto scoffed, my father and I won the real wars. He won the battle at Gulltown, leading the charge. He won 3 battles in a single day at Summerhall. He crushed the Targaryen dynasty at the Trident. Meanwhile, all you did was attack a defenseless city and have 2 children butchered and a princess of Dorne raped and murdered. You let the Lannister fleet get burned at port by Euron Greyjoy, while my father ended the Ironborn Rebellion. I beat Stannis in field while Robb Stark was kicking your ass all over the Riverlands and then pillaged the West. You can only win when you have superior numbers and cheat, but against a competent general, you falter and fail. The two stared each other down again. Let me make this clear. Naruto growled as he leaned on the desk. I run the show around here. You and everyone else follows my lead. I am not Aerys or Joffrey, to be easily cowed by you not fear you. I put that pin on you and I can just as easily take it off. And if you don't get in line, I will. Don't forget, I have your replacement waiting in the wings. With that, Naruto ended the conversation and left, leaving Tywin angry and oddly impressed. If he wasn't his grandson, Naruto would have been secretly killed for speaking to him like that, yet he stood up to Tywin and showed real backbone. At least Cersei did something right, and gave Tywin grandchildren that he could somewhat be proud of. Naruto, meanwhile, decided to send this note to Robb Stark. Robb refused his terms and Naruto could easily crush him in battle, but he would give Robb another chance, if only for the fact that Naruto's former lover, Talisa, was now Robb Stark's wife. By falsely addressing this letter, it would just happen to fall into Robb's lap and Robb would be too busy dealing with the traitors while Naruto took care of the Ironborn. Meanwhile in the gardens, why have I been called to the garden of all places? Sansa asked Tommen. Tommen walked next to her. It's most likely to speak with the real ruler of Highgarden. Who is that? Sansa asked. The hearty laugh caught her off guard, but she was glad to see him smile. His smile always brightened her day. She is Lady Olenna Tyrell, the matriarch of the House Tyrell. He stopped before they drew closer to the center of the gardens. The Queen of Thorns has a very sharp tongue. She may remind me of a more blunt version of my own mother. Lady Olenna may startle you. Sansa smiled and halted her steps as well. Are you just teasing me? My lady, I am a Lord Paramount. The wink at the end of his words discredited him. She giggled. Now you're really just being silly. I did rather miss you while I was in the Riverlands. Going to war isn't really a way to continue a relationship, he commented. She replied genuinely, I prayed for you every day. No wonder I felt so strong. He grinned and offered her his arm as they walked to where the Tyrells had taken over the garden. Marjorie walked forward to greet them with a pretty blue dress. Lady Marjorie. Tommen bowed and kissed the girl's hand. I'm so sorry that I could not make it to your dinner invite with my brother and mother. I had a prior engagement. The future queen curtsied. Of course, my lord. I will take my leave then, he said as he kissed Sansa on the cheek. Marjorie smiled. Of course. Have fun, and try not to get pricked, he whispered to her before walking off. A small smile came to her face at his little tease. Marjorie smiled and led her to where an elegant older woman sat in a chair. Lady Sansa, it is my honor to present my grandmother, the Lady Olenna of House Tyrell. The woman smiled and offered her hand. Kiss me, child. She respectfully kissed the woman's hand as per custom. I am very sorry for your loss, Lady Olenna said. She replied, and I am very sorry for the loss of Lord Renly. He was very gallant. He was and many other good things, but he never really had a claim to that ugly iron chair anyhow. The Queen of Thorns showed the reason for her nickname. Should we have some lemon cakes? Sansa took the sudden change of subjects in stride. Lemon cakes are my favorite. So we've been told. Lady Tyrell smiled. The old woman led them to a table that overlooked the sea. Do you know my son, the Lord of Highgarden? Olenna asked. She answered, I haven't had the pleasure. No great pleasure, believe me. He's an oaf. His father was an oaf as well. My late husband ran off a cliff while he was hawking. They say he wasn't paying attention to where he was going. And now my son is doing the same. Only instead of a horse, he is riding a stag. The lady caught her eyes. Now, I want you to tell me the truth about this royal boy, King Naruto. Sansa asked, What truth, my lady? Rumors say he'd been missing from Westeros for nearly 8 years. He was sold into slavery and more or less never heard from again, and then he suddenly reappears as the leader of the Golden Company and kills his uncle, who was trying to overthrow his brother, who then mysteriously is killed by an assassin before the battle. We wish to know more about him. Does he have a good heart, a gentle hand? Anything that would tell more about who he is. Olenna prodded. Marjorie added, I'm to be his wife, I only want to know what that means. A servant quickly brought a tray of lemon cakes and set them down on the table. Sansa thought about Naruto before saying, The king is very brave. He seems to love his family, and he also mentioned when he was speaking to Lord Tommen and myself about betrothing us, that he is disgusted with the poverty the people of his city live in. He will treat you well, Lady Marjorie. Any issues that he has? Lady Olenna pressed. She thought over it. I would say that he is utterly ruthless, to anyone he perceives as an enemy. That business in the courtroom where he accepted your betrothal to him, Lady Marjorie, that was pre-planned. He did that purely to mess with everyone present, but he also said that he didn't want anybody getting any ideas about using me for their own ends. The grandmother and niece shared smiles in front of her. What about the recently departed king, Joffrey? Lady Olenna said the question more like a statement. We've heard tales even in Highgarden of his little activities. He couldn't have been pleasant. She blurted out without thinking, he was a monster. Oh. That's a pity, but at least you're not marrying him. Lady Olenna spoke to Marjorie. The granddaughter nodded, yes, and don't worry Sansa, anything you say here will be safe. Thank you. She felt her relieved. After Sansa left, Marjorie and Olenna were talking to each other. It sounds like you have your work cut out for you, my dear, Olenna said. Luckily for me, I have a way to make him trust me. Marjorie told her grandmother. She may never be able to truly manipulate Naruto. After all, his instincts, though still raw and fresh in the area of politics, were overall too sharp for that, but at least, she would be able to make him trust her, and maybe, even love her. Afternoon Sept of Baelor. Naruto and Marjorie were in the Sept of Baelor. Currently, he was showing her the burial sites of the Targaryens within the Sept. This right here is Rhaenyra Targaryen. Aegon II had his dragon Sunfire burn her alive, and then had it eat all but her feet. That is what's buried down there. Naruto explained as he gave her a tour of the place. Meanwhile, his mother was talking with Olenna. The ceremony is normally held in the main sanctum, which seats 700 comfortably, Cersei said. There appears to be a good deal of room on the premises for everyone else, Olenna said. There aren't more than 700 people of any importance, Cersei said. No, the rest are there to look adoringly upon the 700 to remind them how superior they must be, Olenna agreed. And this right here is the ashes of Aerion Targaryen, also called Aerion Brightflame. Naruto said as he pointed the urn out for Marjorie. He thought drinking Wildfire would turn him into a dragon. He was wrong, very wrong. Do you sympathize with what he went through? Marjorie asked. A little bit. I know what's like to burned by the substance. I owe Grandmaster Pycelle a lot. Without him, I would not have healed as well as I did, and I wouldn't be the handsome king who stands before you. Naruto joked and she laughed with him, finding his mild display of vanity amusing. Back in the Red Keep in the stairs somewhere in Maegor's Holdfast, Pycelle, or rather his corpse, could be found. His body lay on the stairs, a gaping wound in his skull. 2 Golden Company guards at the top of the stairs walked away whistling inconspicuously, returning to their posts. Pycelle would not be found until Lannister guards came by 10 minutes later. Sept of Baelor, stupid-eyed, loyal to me. Oh well, I suppose I'll be needing a new Grandmaster now, preferably one with more loyalty. Naruto thought as his guards should have completed the task by now. He made the decision to take out Pycelle after his conversation with Tywin. He knew from talking with Tyrion that Pycelle was his grandfather's spy, and Naruto was currently annoyed with his grandfather for not getting with the program, so it was time to remove one of his more valuable pieces. Lady Olenna, Naruto said as he came up to her and his mother. A pleasure to meet you finally. Your Grace, Olenna said as she offered her hand and he kissed it. Would you like to see where Elia and her children are buried? Naruto asked Marjorie. Are you sure that Lady Marjorie doesn't find this all a bit macabre? Cersei asked. Oh no, it's quite all right, Your Grace. Marjorie said, it's like taking a walk through history. Naruto guided her over to where Elia's children were buried. This is where they're buried, Naruto said solemnly. What happened to them? It was a tragedy, Marjorie said, as she truly meant that. What happened to Elia was horrific. She couldn't imagine what it was like to watch your children violently be murdered and then raped and murdered yourself. Naruto heard the outcry of the small folk outside and seemed a little hesitant. Walking amongst them and hiding in plain sight when they didn't know who he was one thing, but he had never had all their attention placed on him before. Marjorie saw his hesitation and saw it as an opportunity to make him trust her more. Would you like to see them? She asked, causing him to look at her as she explained further. If you give them even a fraction of your love, they would return it tenfold. I heard what they say about you to each other, how they look at you when you walk among them. You led the defense of King Landing. You saved every living soul in this city. They love you. Marjorie's truthful words hit home and had the intended effect on him as he considered her point and saw the truth in it before making a decision. Open the doors. Naruto ordered the guards, who did so. Marjorie smiled at this. Cersei was brought out of whatever she was talking about with Olenna to see the doors open and Naruto and Marjorie looking to walk outside. Naruto, Cersei called out with real concern. She had not yet forgotten the incident where a mob attacked them on the way back and was afraid for her second eldest. Marjorie looked back at Cersei briefly before taking Naruto's hand in hers and leading him out. "Wait," Cersei called, but to no avail. Naruto and Marjorie stepped outside to a crowd of cheering small folk, applauding Lady Marjorie and their king, Naruto Baratheon. A line of Golden Company men ensured the small folk did not get too close as the two nobles stood on the steps of the sept. Naruto was not sure how to greet these people, so when he saw Marjorie smile at them and wave before smiling at him, Naruto followed suit, waving towards the small folk. Naruto smiled back at Marjorie, who returned it with a smile of her own. Cersei saw this and was furious, glaring a hole into the head of the woman she felt was trying to steal the last of her children that still gave a damn about her. Tommen's wedding. It was a grand day. The sun was shining. The people of King Landing were bustling with activity. And noble lords, ladies, and their children from the Stormlands, the Westerlands, the Reach, and even some from the Crownlands were gathered here to witness the marriage between Tommen Baratheon, the Lord of House Baratheon, and Sansa of House Stark. The nobles were gathered in the Sept of Baelor, with Tommen standing by the High Septon. The doors to the Sept opened and in walked Sansa, dressed in a beautiful golden gown. She saw the man she loved and they both smiled at each other. Naruto walked up to Sansa and held out his arm for her, confusing her. Naruto saw this and explained, "Since none of your relatives are here, as the father of the realm, the duty of giving you away falls to me." Naruto escorted Sansa down the aisle and left her with Tommen as they said their vows. Wedding feast. Sansa was smiling, which Tommen was glad for. It was the first genuine smile she had shown in public since her father's death. The dinner and dancing went on relatively smooth until someone in the crowd said, "Time for the bedding ceremony," whoever they were announced. "There will be no bedding ceremony," Tommen declared darkly. One of the older lords looked at him in shock. "Where's your respect for tradition, my lord?" "No, I agree with my brother on this. There will be no bedding ceremony," Naruto declared in support of his brother. "The bedding ceremony is an age-old practice, your grace," another noble objected. Naruto scoffed, "So is first night. I am certain there are many women in Westeros that are glad King Jaehaerys and Queen Alysanne outlawed that barbaric tradition." He turned to the crowd and his voice thundered around the room. "I mean really, the bedding ceremony is just an excuse for perverted old lechers to lay their dirty hands on young women and molest them." He turned to Marjorie. "I certainly won't be allowing anyone but myself to touch my wife-to-be when the time comes." Marjorie smiled at her future husband as she was happy she wouldn't have to be stripped naked in front of other people. As the vow says, Sansa is Tommen's alone. Naruto smiled at his brother, patted him on the shoulder. "Enjoy the after feast, brother, we'll keep the party going." Tommen smiled thankfully and took Sansa's hand and led her to their temporary chambers. Sansa looked at her new husband. She had seen this moment in her dreams, but in her dreams her family was there also. Tommen had written to Robb explaining the situation and hoped that they won't bear him any ills. He also requested that he send to someone to act as Sansa's sworn shield. Sansa couldn't stand the waiting any longer. No sooner had Tommen turned around after closing the door, than Sansa rushed over to him and pressed her lips to his own. Tommen was taken off guard, but before long he returned the affection, their hands running over each other's clothed bodies, their fingers entangled in their hair. Tommen broke the kiss and he caressed her cheek gently. Tommen spoke first. "I know what my family expects of me and I couldn't care less." He stroked her face. "I will not force this upon you, Sansa. We can wait until you are ready. For as long as it takes, doesn't have to be tonight." Sansa shook her head. "I waited long enough, my love," she replied. "I have loved you ever since we kissed during my father's tourney. I used to like your brother, but I was young, foolish and soft. I learned my lesson the hard way. If it weren't for you I might have flung myself from the Traitor's Walk. You gave me strength to survive Joffrey, Tommen." Sansa took his hand and placed it between her legs. "Now let me give you this." Back with Naruto. Naruto was enjoying the feast while his brother and new good sister consummated their marriage. Naruto had danced with a whole host noble ladies. First, it was his own mother. Then he moved on to Esser Garland's wife, Lady Leonette Fossaway, whose heavily pregnant belly made it look as though the king was trying to shift a wardrobe dressed in Tyrell silks. He danced with a number of other ladies, such as Marjorie's ladies-in-waiting, including the beautiful Taena Merryweather, who originated from Mir. Thankfully, she did not have family over there when he sacked the city, so she wasn't angry about it. Soon enough he danced with Marjorie. "That was very sweet, what you did for Tommen and Sansa," she said to him. "I meant every word of it. I'm not going to humiliate you in front of the realm by having you stripped naked in front of them. The only one who has any right to see you naked once we are married is me," Naruto said, teared for a moment at his chivalry as she felt touched by how far he was taking this as they continued dancing. "How are you holding up?" Naruto asked her. I fear I don't follow your meaning, Naruto," Marjorie asked. "I know my mother threatened you before the ceremony earlier," Naruto said as they glided along the floor, to the surprise of Marjorie. She had thought that conversation was private. "How did you?" she meant to ask him. "I have eyes and ears everywhere," Naruto said ominously before he chuckled sheepishly. "I apologize. That probably sounds creepy." "Just a little bit," Marjorie admitted with a smile. "Honestly, I am not that shaken, save for the fact that I wasn't expecting her to get violent. I was trying to get the measure of her and play nice for your sake. But I feel much better now, knowing my big strong husband is watching over me. You are going to be the mother of our children, my future queen. I would of course want to make sure you are kept safe from any threat, even ones posed by my family," Naruto said. The dance song was ending and Marjorie wrapped her arms around Naruto's neck and gave him a passionate kiss on the lips, which Naruto responded in kind. After a few moments of their public display of affection, Naruto withdrew from the kiss. "Now, if you would excuse me, I have some punishment to go dish out." Later with his mother, after talking with Tywin and getting him to agree with his idea, Naruto found his mother on a balcony overlooking Blackwater Bay. Naruto came up beside her and leaned on the balcony. "Beautiful evening tonight, isn't it? One could be tempted to forget that a great battle was waged here just days ago," Naruto commented. "Yes, it is," Cersei agreed. "We need to talk, Mom," Naruto said as he turned to her and his expression became colder. "You threatened Marjorie before the ceremony." "What are you talking about?" Cersei asked in shock. "You talked about the Rhines, alluded to how they overreached their position, how none are alive and how, if Marjorie ever called you mother again, you'll have her strangled in her sleep." Naruto growled as he recited details about what they discussed, which shocked Cersei. "How do you know about that?" Like Marjorie, Cersei was certain their conversation was kept private. "Varys has his little birds, Lyso no Mar has his whispers, I have my eagles," Naruto said ominously. Naruto was paranoid enough that he did not fully trust Varys and Lysono and maintained his own network of spies. A smart man has his own spies, and doesn't rely solely on others for his information. "Honestly, what the hell is wrong with you? She's just playing nice with you for my sake and you have the nerve to threaten her?" Naruto demanded. "I will not tolerate any threats to my future queen. I thought I made that clear when I banned you from any position of authority, but it seems the lesson was not learned. So from now on, the amount of Lannister guards you once had access to will be reduced to 15 from its original 50, and your monthly stipend that you receive from Tywin will be cut down to 15%. Cersei's eyes widened. The guards were not that big of a deal, but her money, with 85% of her money gone, she wouldn't be able to afford nearly as many new dresses or to keep drinking all that wine she had been drinking. "Son, please, you don't need to do this to me. I thought you wanted to fix things between us." Naruto's eyes softened just a bit as he brought a hand to her cheek and rubbed it affectionately, before Naruto pulled his mother in for a gentle hug. "Oh, my poor sweet foolish mother," Naruto whispered, his breath hot on her ear as she, in her slightly intoxicated mind, began to have improper thoughts about Naruto as she could feel his hard muscles underneath his clothes. "I am not the one doing this to us. You are. You already lost 2 of your remaining children. Swallow that damn pride of yours and play nice with my wife before you lose me too. I'm starting to run out of chances to give you." Naruto placed a chaste kiss on her cheek before he pulled away and walked to his room, leaving her there to ponder over what she should do next. Naruto's room. Naruto entered his room to find a note on his nightstand. Quickly unfolding it, Naruto read the note from one of his spies, which stated only a single line: "The job is done. I shall explain more when you arrive on Dragonstone. Mercy." Good, Naruto thought. Naruto ignited the note with a spark of green wildfire, turning the note to ash. Naruto then turned around and took off his jerkin and tunic underneath, only to stop when he sensed something. You're getting better at sneaking in. Marjorie came out from the shadows on the far end of the room. I was hoping I had been able to sneak up on you this time. You still got a ways to go. Naruto teased. Marjorie smiled and moved closer to Naruto until they were inches apart. You're being so good to me, and I couldn't help but think that you deserve a reward, husband. Marjorie kissed him full on the lips. The end. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.